A car was driving through a wooded area on a dark night. The driver said that in rainy weather in the mountainous area, there is a burial place of a long-haired woman in red. This female body was absolutely unharmed and whole, like a living person. As for why a 2,000-year-old woman's stupidity might look like a beauty who fell asleep due to experiments. Hearing that our hero thought this was nonsense, the driver decided to tell him a secret. The young man did not understand how the girl's body could disappear, and most importantly, where. The driver reported that he saw with his own eyes how the car with the girl's coffin overturned. This news could not be published due to it being a national cultural relic. When the guy arrived at the scene, he thanked the man for his work. Our hero wanted to call his beloved when he looked away. He noticed a young girl getting out of an older man's car. The young lady's face was slightly red from the alcohol she had drunk. Having examined the face, the young man was surprised and angry to recognize the girl as his beloved. The body began to shake with anger, but Lip still approached. Noticing her lover, Millie was genuinely surprised. Lip said that he came to congratulate her on her birthday, and did not expect that the lady of his heart would be a girl of easy virtue. Millie was angry that she was mistaken for an escort, and began to scream that the guy had not been able to give her anything over the years. The girl's companion watched everything that was happening. Afterwards, the man came up and said that our hero was not worthy of Millie. The young lady stood behind her companion and waited for him. Dave demanded that Lip leave. He was uncomfortable seeing him. The man looked angrily at the young man. The guy asked if the old man had finished his speech. Lip clenched his fist as a wave of negative emotions washed over him. Without waiting for the speech to continue, our hero rushed at the man, but the next moment he flew onto the asphalt. Dave flexed his fist to deliver another punch. The guy looked at the stranger as if he were the scum of society. Millie began to worry about the young man when she saw a bruise on his face. Lip sat with blood flowing from his nose, staining his clothes. Common sense began to leave our hero's head. When the man was about to strike, Millie told her ex that Dave used to do Muay Thai. Therefore, in order to prevent the fight from continuing, the young lady began to take her sugar daddy away. Having stood up, Lip began to swear that things would not be easy for the man in the future. Afterwards, he wandered along the street and stopped at a lamppost. Out of betrayal, the guy bought alcohol. Remembering everything that had happened, Lip, in his grief, emptied another bottle. Our hero's legs couldn't hold him up because of the alcohol he'd drunk. Lipa had no strength left to get up, so he lay down like a star. The tired guy sighed heavily. Suddenly, he saw a glowing man in the sky. As soon as the girl approached, the young man realized that he could not move. Lip's gaze was immediately drawn to the girl's chest. The young man watched the stranger's further actions. The girl stuck out her tongue for some reason. Afterwards, she began to lick the blood and dirt from the guy's face like a cat. The tongue slowly reached our hero's mouth, penetrating it. Lip was outraged by such strange and erotic actions. The girl blushed. The creature inside her was surprised that the body had withstood several thousand years. A slight tremor ran through our hero's body from excitement, which greatly embarrassed him. The next moment, the stranger's expression changed. The lady decided to help the guy become a zombie and bared her fangs for this. Lip remembered the rumors about the dead girl who disappeared. The realization that the woman in front of him was a zombie came instantly. Veins appeared on my face from the tension in my jaw. The stranger bit Lip's neck. Having moved away, the girl began to suck the life energy out of our hero. The skin began to stretch over the young man's bones. Lip began to think that he was already leaving this world. After eating, the stranger licked her lips, saying that she would help the young man. She leaned over the now dead man again and bit. Lip's body began to recover as if blood had been poured into it through the bite. The limbs began to tremble, and the hand began to clench involuntarily. Lip struck, but the stranger bounced back into the air. The tree trunk broke due to the impact of a gust of wind. A moment later, Lip was in the air. But due to not knowing how to handle the new power, the young man began to fall. Lip landed on all fours like a cat. Our hero couldn't believe that he had a superpower. Soon the stranger descended into the sky and stood before the guy. Frightened by the girl, the guy rushed away screaming that there was a ghost in front of him. The young lady smiled at this behavior. The next moment, the girl caught up with our hero. Realizing that he couldn't escape, Lip fell to his knees. He began to beg to be released, putting the girl in an awkward position. Soon the creature smiled, saying that she was not a ghost, but a zombie, just like the guy. Lip couldn't believe what was happening in his dream. The lady was offended when she was reproached for the fact that a zombie cannot have a heartbeat and breathe. Then she went on the offensive herself, asking why Lip was always upset. The guy fell silent, thinking about what he had heard. Afterwards, he looked at the creature, clearly not fully believing her. The girl asked not to worry about them being zombies, because there is something more cruel than them in the world. The next thing the guy wanted to know was the stranger's name. The girl looked at our hero in confusion, but hearing that she didn't remember her name, Lip realized that the lady was hopeless. As soon as the guy suggested giving the zombie a name, the girl was delighted. If you look closely, the stranger looks like a fairy. Therefore, it was decided that she would be called Lin. Hearing that Lin had to go, the guy was at a loss. But before the girl could leave, the guy started shouting that he hadn't been given any advice on how to live with his new body. Hearing that Lin had almost forgotten about it, the guy became angry. He wanted to know what would happen if he couldn't escape from the priest. Lin was sure that there couldn't be too many priests, and a simple guy shouldn't harm God. Afterwards, she handed over a scroll that would help the young man improve his skills. Our hero looked at the scroll with confusion, but he wanted to ask something, but the girl disappeared. The guy was wondering if he could file a complaint for poor assistance. Lipu had no choice, so he unrolled the scroll. But it wasn't the sweaty scribbles that embarrassed our hero. Therefore, without really understanding what was written, Lip rolled up the paper. The guy didn't understand a word, so he wanted to go back to Lin and tell her about it. He caught a taxi at the side of the road. Sitting in the warm salon, the young man fell into a light sleep. But after a couple of minutes, he woke up. Today was incredible for him. The strangest thing he thought was that he became a zombie. He began to think about how he would grow long teeth and nails. Lip came out into a dark alley. He decided to take a leisurely stroll home. Lip stopped when he heard a conversation about the loss of a girl's body. The guy began to listen attentively to the dialogue about strange sounds. He continued on his way slowly, catching the essence of the stranger's conversation. But suddenly Lipa was blinded by a bright light. Local hooligans began to demand valuable things from our hero. The young man calmly refused. It was decided to beat the victim, because sooner or later the guy would give in and give up everything he had. Our hero offered to treat the hooligans to food, but he couldn't afford more. The guys just laughed, calling Lip a coward. Having thought everything over, our hero changed his mind about his proposal. Lip decided to play with them and offered to take $10 from him. The hooligans were angry because of the insult and the comparison with dogs that need to take something away. The gang leader ordered his henchmen to beat up our hero, but before the fight could even begin, the opponent was hit. Jay hit his back on the gate. Afterwards, the young man slid down the door unconscious. The gang members were shocked. Our hero was also surprised by the force of his blow. Having decided to avenge the boss, one of the guys rushed into the attack. Lip managed to quickly dodge his opponent's knife. Then he grabbed the hand with the knife and squeezed it. The young man began to cry from pain, and from the strain his nose began to bleed. Lip was angry and broke his arm, saying that this was the last robbery of the hooligans. Our hero didn't want to let the villains go without teaching them a lesson. In the next move, the bully was sent flying. Lip warned that anyone who called him a coward next time would be killed. The other gang members simply ran away in fear. But our hero managed to hide far away and caught up with them from the air. With one kick, one of the opponents was knocked out. After a successful landing, Lip went after the last bandit. The enemy also received a strong blow to the back. The guy kissed the wall with his face, and after a couple of minutes all the enemies were scattered. Having finished, Lip straightened his jacket. But then something hit the guy in the head. His condition became strange. His body seemed to be splitting into several pieces. Lip felt hellish pain. Our hero felt terrible because of the enemy's blood. The body felt like it was on fire. The veins on his face bulged and fangs appeared in his mouth. The young man did not understand what was happening. Lip's gaze was again drawn to the enemy's blood. The smell of blood made the guy want to have a snack. To somehow restrain himself, he raised his head to the sky. The moon began to emit a blue glow. The light fell directly on our hero. Lip's condition improved dramatically. Because of his strong eyesight, the boy began to see the moon clearly. Due to the moonlight, our hero easily rose upward. Soon the light began to be absorbed into the young man's body. Finding himself back on the ground, Lip breathed a sigh of relief. Opening his eyes, the young man's attention was again drawn to the bad guys. Next time, it won't be so easy for the guys to escape our hero's wrath. After leaving the battlefield, Lip headed home. And a couple of minutes later, he was at the door of his apartment. Upon arrival, the young man took a shower to wash away the remnants of the day. It was an apartment for several people. The guy sat down on the bed and began to familiarize himself with the contents of the scroll. Lip couldn't even read the contents, so it was decided to copy the movement. Having looked closely, the guy realized that it would not be easy. Gathering his strength, the guy exhaled. After a couple of minutes, Lip began to repeat all the unusual poses. All these trainings were very tiring. The moon was looking through the open window. The linden tree was again attracted by the moonlight. Without thinking, he inhaled the light through his nose. These strange actions made him feel better. The guy remembered the movement from the scroll. Already in the moonlight, Lip began to repeat the contents of the scroll again. Thanks to the moonlight, the boy's movements became easier. Suddenly it dawned on him. These 12 paintings represent 12 ways to absorb the essence of the moon. Lip caught his breath. Our former hero would be dead now, but the new him will no longer live like a coward. Early in the morning, the guy received a call from work. As he was leaving, the guy said that he would arrive soon, but when he went out, he realized something was wrong. The sun's rays hit our hero's skin. It was 10 in the morning, and the sun was already so bright. Due to burns began to appear on exposed skin. The guy ran back into the building at the speed of light. He came out wearing sunglasses, which were supposed to provide protection. Lip put a cap on his hair. Passers-by were surprised by the appearance of our hero. Already at work, the young man asked Lip to sign the documents. The young man reported that he and the staff had just been examined by the staff, and he covered for Lip. The guy's attention was drawn to a sound from the sales area. Lip immediately realized that someone was robbing them. The bandit was armed and ordered everyone to remain silent. People were scared to death. The boss of a criminal group began yelling at his subordinate to work faster. But then the leader's attention was drawn to something on the side. The bandit pointed his gun at Lip as he entered. Our hero was unperturbed, and there was no fear on his face. But then someone blocked the guard's path. The store owner offered to take all the jewelry and leave the hostages unharmed. The bandit just smiled contentedly. He intended to kill someone, so he pulled the gun from the trigger. The weapon was pointed directly at the owner's head. The man was surprised that the bandit knew him. The boss explained that who doesn't know the famous entrepreneur. Lip listened to everything with clenched teeth. But the next moment the gun was knocked out of his hands with the help of a simple telephone. The bandit's hand shook from the blow. Lip was the cause. The man began to scream in pain. Lip rushed at the bandits. The blow hit the stomach area. The force of the attack sent the man flying into the elevator doors. The owner watched everything from the side. The man was surprised and speechless. One of the bandits shot at our hero. The bullet hit Lipa straight in the shoulder. The bullet fell to the floor, folded in half. The men were frightened and did not understand what went wrong. Kevin thought it might be the legendary martial arts bulletproof vest. The man thought that he could carry out Madame Mary's order, but it would be difficult. But seeing Lipa, it was possible. One of the bandits attacked our hero with a monster, fearing him. The next moment, the criminal was thrown to the floor with a grab. Suddenly, the young man felt something hit him on the head. Our hero turned around. The criminal began to shake with fear and apologize for the blow. But a few minutes later, Bandit received a hit from a helicopter to the skull. The bandits fell to their knees and began to ask for forgiveness. Our hero did not understand why he had to spare them, since they had just been so brave. Police cars arrived soon. Madame Mary lived in a luxurious mansion. The owner of the house was doing yoga when she was distracted. Mr. Kevin has arrived. Mary was sure that since he came, he had good news. The man reported that he had found a person suitable for the role of the performer. The girl looked at him. Afterwards, she stood up and began to study the information about our hero. The girl was afraid that something might go wrong. Kevin assured that Lip has a good character, and he vouches for him. Mary was worried about Elin because she was a spoiled child. Lip came as soon as he was called. The man smiled and confirmed that he was looking for him. Kevin immediately laid it all out about how he wanted the guy to become Mrs. Mary Bloss's bodyguard. The young man was surprised by this proposal. Kevin corrected himself that it was more accurately Mary's daughter, Alice, who needed a bodyguard. The guy was a little nervous that he always had to be with the woman's daughter. The man thought that Lip was very lucky. Soon it was decided to take our hero to the young lady. Soon the men reached the mansion. A girl's scream was heard over the intercom, saying that she wouldn't open the door no matter how many times Kevin rang. The man said that he had brought in a new bodyguard who was different from the others. Immediately after these words, the gates opened. But as soon as the guests entered, they were immediately hit with a bat. Lip clearly didn't expect this. The guy deftly knocked the bat out of the hands of the girl who attacked them. The bat hit the ground with a loud thud. The men were shocked at the appearance of the young lady before them. The girl was wearing only a nightgown. Alice picked up the bat again. She swung to strike, thereby revealing a view of her underwear. When she attacked, our hero dodged, but his gaze was riveted to her large breasts. Dodging another blow, the guy emphasized the shape of his hips. But after a while, Elin realized where the guy was looking. Having covered everything she could, the young lady promised to kill our hero. Lip promised to stop staring if the girl stopped attacking. Kevin introduced the girl in front of them, Lipa. The young lady was raised as a boy, and therefore studied several martial arts. As soon as I started talking about the test for the bodyguard, the girl started talking about a second round. A moment later, Elin took a piece of paper out of her bag. Hearing that the guy had to finish his English essay, Lip's mood changed slightly. After receiving the essay, the girl reported that he barely passed the assignment. But as it turned out, there was one more final test. To pass the test, the hero went to the pool. Elin called all the bodyguards in the house. Lipu had to defeat all the men, and then he would be hired. Our hero was confident in himself because of his new powers. Elin was irritated by the guy's self-confidence, so she set the rules that the fight would be 4-on-1. The girl emphasized that if the guy is afraid, he can leave. But our hero didn't have the word surrender in his vocabulary. The young lady was irritated by every word the stranger said. In order to quickly bring Lip down from the sky, she ordered the bodyguards to attack. The men began to ridicule our hero's confidence. Lip was afraid that if he overdid it, the men could become disabled. One of the men decided to attack first. Lip dodged, managing to light a cigarette. He took a leisurely drag. In order not to waste time, the guy called on everyone to attack immediately. The men were determined to be our hero until he died. But after a few seconds, all the bodyguards were lying unconscious. Elin was amazed by Lip's speed and understood why he provoked the guards. When our hero began to approach the lady, she became frightened. But due to careless movements, Elin lost her balance. Lip was there in an instant. But seeing the chest, the mind slightly left the head. The girl, blushing with embarrassment, asked to let her go. Lip reminded that Elin was now obliged to fulfill what she had promised him. The young lady promised that she would always listen to Kevin from now on. After she was released, she went on the run. But having run to a safe distance, she promised Lip that she would teach him a lesson. Soon it became late night, and the moon came out into the sky. Lip sat on the street and absorbed the moonlight for his pumping. But then the energy began to gather into some kind of strange clot. Lip didn't understand what exactly was in front of him and why this something was taking away his strength. The young man tried to catch his enemy, but it was no use. Our hero was angered by the presence of something incomprehensible. Lip did not give up and still decided to catch the arrogant creature. The guy jumps onto the roof without thinking to catch up with the creature. And so, having applied all his effort, he was able to catch it after a couple of minutes. The creature was scared, and because of the frightening feeling, it began to emit a bright light. This light caused an explosion that damaged our hero's hand. The creature itself turned into a ball and rolled towards the wall. Lip slowly approached the baby, wondering why he was no longer so fierce. The blood from our hero's hands began to disappear as soon as the ball was on them. These actions greatly surprised Lipa, but then the creature disappeared from his hands. All that remains is a small ball. Smiling, Lip asked the baby to come back. The creature did not keep us waiting and appeared in the guy's hands. The young man asked if the balloon wanted to go with him, to which it agreed. The creature now had a name, Little Milk Ball. The next day at the Blossom Mansion, Lip woke up early in the morning, but Sharik was still sleeping. He slowly began to wake up his new friend, because it was the first working day. The boys went to do their morning routine. Afterwards, they went into the mansion through the main entrance. Lipu was wondering where Elin was today. Approaching the door, he noticed a bucket. The actions of the young lady were so childish. As soon as the door opened, the bucket fell to the floor. But unfortunately, Elin's boyfriend remained dry, and her prank was not successful. When asked why she was in such a bad mood, the girl replied that the young man should mind his own business. The girl explained that their rooms were on the same floor, but in different parts. So Lip had to walk through the entire corridor. Elin was about to leave after showing Lip his room. But then she was stopped by a sharp squeak. The young lady started asking questions, and our hero was thinking about how to get out of it. But the young man reported that he had not heard anything. The girl didn't believe it, and began to examine her bodyguard. Lip immediately began to get indignant and act like he was untouchable. When she heard that Ellen had abused the guy, she immediately blushed. As soon as the lady ran away, the young man breathed a sigh of relief. The guy explained to Sharik that the girl was a real devil. As night fell, Lip and his new friend sat in the room and fed on the energy of the moon. Suddenly, the guy's attention was drawn to something in the window. Lip immediately realized that this was another prank from the young lady. The head hung on a special mount, which the young man immediately noticed. A plan for revenge arose in our hero's head. At night, the young man sneaked into Elin's room. In the dream, the young lady was a real angel. The boy made his way to the head of the bed like a mouse. The monster's head was hung almost next to the girl's face. The next morning, a deafening scream echoed throughout the mansion. Without thinking, Lip ran into the young lady's room. Elin held yesterday's props in her hands. In a fit of rage, she threw the dummy straight into our hero's face. The young man did not understand what he was guilty of. Because the girl started everything first, Lip could barely keep up with Elin's fast walking. As soon as the young lady entered the school grounds, she was surrounded by boys. The school children admired the girl and confessed their love. But then they were interrupted by conversations from the outside. It was the school's biggest bully, Bob. The guy started apologizing to Bob, saying it was just a joke. The bully said that it was okay, because Elin would always love only him. The young lady was infuriated by the guy's behavior. Elin rudely rejected the bully, saying that she would never love him. Bob's attention was drawn to the fact that some stranger approached his beloved. He began to flex his fists. The guy was angry that some bastard was touching his girlfriend, but Lip didn't react at all and continued to lead the young lady away. Realizing that he would not receive an answer, Bob rushed at the stranger. But Bob was stopped by a teacher who came out into the schoolyard. The students admired the young teacher, drooling over her. Elin greeted the teacher while Bob thought of an excuse. The young lady told Lip that the person in front of them was the Chinese teacher, Cece. The teacher demanded an explanation from Bobby. The hooligan began to justify himself, saying that there had been a misunderstanding. Cece wanted to get confirmation of what Elin had said. But then Lip caught the teacher's attention. Having received confirmation of what was said, Cece walked away. Bob was angry at the teacher for jumping out and not letting the stranger teach him a lesson. Lipu was curious whether the bully was their classmate, to which he received the answer that the guy had loved Elin for a long time, and now it would only get worse. Already in class, Lip introduced himself to his new classmates. Cece just nodded at our hero's introduction. The students began to discuss the beauty of their new classmate. During recess, Lipa was ambushed near the men's restroom. Bob began to explain that our hero doesn't look as cool as he wants to seem. The hooligan was angry that our hero hadn't even arrived when he stole all the attention. The brawl began to attract the attention of school children. Lip repeated that he didn't care who was in front of him. Bob is even more furious with her. Afterwards, he and his friends started making fun of the guy. And then, to prove who was the boss at school, he attacked our hero. But Lip managed to intercept the blow. Bob was surprised by the enemy's speed. The hooligan asked his friends to help him. Bob's henchman took the order and attacked from behind. One of the guys flew to the side, hitting his back. Another one got hit in the face and his nose started bleeding. Bob Lip himself lifted him off the ground by his neck. But soon the young man was sent into the wall. Our hero said that if the guy wants to take revenge, he will wait. The school children began to applaud and praise our hero. Elin was among the children. The young lady was amazed by Lip's strength. Elin was quite sweet when she wasn't playing pranks on anyone. Lip was embarrassed and asked to leave, as it was quite crowded. The girl hugged the boy by the hand and led him into the classroom. Among the children, there was a strange guy who was staring at our hero. The sun shone brightest at noon. Lip put his hand out and immediately got burned. The zombie body is perfect except for exposure to the sun. The guy understood that he would still have to train for a long time to stay in the sun. Elin soon called her bodyguard to lunch. The guy suggested that the girl have lunch alone and he would order delivery. The girl was not happy with this state of affairs. Lip reported that he was a little afraid of sunlight. There was silence between the heroes, and after a few minutes the girl became distraught over the absurdity about the umbrella. But Lip nevertheless ordered an umbrella for himself, and he and the young lady went to lunch. Suddenly Elin became interested in our hero's personal life. The young man immediately remembered Lin and her betrayal. The young lady immediately realized that she had said something wrong. The heroes were walking slowly when one of the letters on the roof of the building began to wobble. Lip immediately pushed his charge away, causing her skirt to rise up. The young lady landed on her butt, grimacing in pain. Just as she wanted to yell at the bodyguard, she saw that he was holding heavy letters. After a few moments, the guy threw the object away. Then he looked up where the rest of the hieroglyphs were. The girl was worried about Lip's condition. It was strange that the recently installed sign began to fall. The most important thing is that it couldn't just fall off. The girl didn't understand how Lip could catch something that had fallen from such a height. Our hero began to look closely, but there was no one on the rooftops. Elin asked what had happened, but was told that it was nothing serious. The girl was surprised when she heard that they would not go home by car. Lip said that their transport would be a bicycle, on which they would follow the lady's car. The school day ended with evening. Our heroes slowly made their way home on their two-wheeled friend. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a truck crashed into Mrs. Elin's car. The boys were surprised and scared. Running up to the car, the girl saw that the driver was seriously injured. After checking the truck, our hero realized that since it was empty, Elin was in trouble. The heroes had no choice but to leave the scene. Upon arrival at the mansion, the guy told everything to Mary, the girl's mother. When asked about why the guy immediately became suspicious after the letter fell, the young man nodded. The guy wanted to ask something, but he didn't dare. The woman asked what exactly the young man wanted to know, and then she heard the question of who she could have offended. Mary thought about it. She soon shared that she had many business rivals. And the first on the list of suspects was the owner of Company C. Lip heard about this scandal. After declaring bankruptcy, the owner committed suicide. Mary asked if it was terrible, to which she received a positive answer. The woman wanted to achieve everything in a world where men rule almost everything. Lip decided to study all the C companies to find out who else could have harmed the Bloss family. That same evening, our hero went to a bar. The waitress who served our hero was his friend. Catherine was glad that her dude had stopped by after a long time. The girl started asking when Lip became so rich, since he had never ordered such expensive alcohol before. Kat agreed to have a drink with our hero when she finished work. Lip was glad to see his old friend. But then the guy's attention was drawn to a conversation. Turning his gaze in his direction, he saw that two men were pestering his acquaintance. The man was furious that the waitress did not want to drink with him, so he began to force alcohol into the poor employee. Suddenly, the bottle flew to the side. The guy turned his attention to the direction from which the interference came. Lip stood up for Catherine. Our hero and the waitress were surrounded by thugs. The man was furious that some brat had interfered in his affairs. Without thinking, Lip began to attack. The blow landed right in the stomach area at breakneck speed. The man's face twisted in pain. As soon as he fell to his knees, he coughed up blood and ordered the young man to be killed. Afterwards, he laughed and repeated again that the brat needed to be killed. The strangers immediately rushed at Lip, but then one of the bandits got hit in the face and lost a tooth. The rest simply watched from the sidelines, but they realized they had jumped to conclusions when one of the strongest flew into the wall. Soon the rest were defeated. Witnesses were shocked that the fight happened so quickly. The man who started the fight was standing on all fours in front of Lip. Realizing that he was in danger, he began to beg for mercy. But our hero grabbed the man by the neck, not intending to let go of the situation. The victim continued to pray for forgiveness, although it was useless. A moment later, Lip sent the offender flying. The man slid face first across the club floor. These actions raised dust. Consciousness began to leave the body, already the victim. Lip was pleased with his actions. The girl looked at the guy, admiring him. Lip immediately took Kat's hand and pulled her towards him. Hugging the girl, he warned those who were arriving that if they misbehaved, this would be the end. Afterwards, our hero began to lead the waitress away from prying eyes. But suddenly the girl started coughing out of nowhere. Lip noticed almost immediately that something was wrong with his friend. Kat sank down, holding onto the wall, and began to cough more violently, and then she vomited. Our hero decided to take the girl to a place where she could rest. The young lady's face was very red. Soon the boys reached the nearest motel. Our hero slowly led Catherine into the room. Afterwards, the young man laid her on the bed to find some pills for the girl. Once on the bed, Kat began to breathe heavily. She was insanely hot. Leaving the drugstore, Lip lit a cigarette. The young man walked slowly back to the hotel. Having finished smoking, the guy went into the room to give the girl some medicine. Upon entering the room, our hero did not find his companion. Soon he heard a voice coming from the bathroom. Still breathing heavily, Catherine announced that she would be out soon. At this time, our hero prepared the medicine. Soon the bathroom door opened, and along with the steam came Catherine. Lip turned around to hand over the medicine. But because of Kat's appearance, the guy froze. Because the girl had just taken a shower, her shirt fit tightly to her body. Embarrassed, Lip asked the girl to dress normally, but she did not listen to him. Her mind was clouded. The guy walked away and hit the bed and fell on it. The girl, in turn, began to climb onto the lying young man. Our hero tried to bring the lady to her senses. Catherine said that she wanted to embrace the young man, continuing to breathe heavily. Lip remembered that his girlfriend usually falls asleep after drinking alcohol, and then he realized that alcohol was an aphrodisiac. Without wasting a minute, the guy grabbed the blanket. The young man threw the girl into it, changing places with her. Lip began to urge his friend to calm down, holding her hands. Taking off his belt, the guy said that this was all being done for the benefit of Catherine. Afterwards, he wrapped the girl in a blanket, tying it with a belt. The sun began to awaken the sleeping city with its rays. Catherine woke up with the sun. She didn't understand where she was. But after looking at myself, there was a moment of silence. And a moment later, a scream echoed throughout the room, causing Lip's nose to bleed. It was obvious that Kat had misunderstood everything. After 1,000 words, the girl understood everything and thanked our hero for his help. After the explanation, Lip gave the girl the washed clothes. The guy was curious how Kat knew Henry, the rowdy guy from the bar. The girl reported that the man periodically visited the club, and she served him. Having thought about everything, the guy assumed that everything was set up. In fact, the girl wanted to quit, but now wherever she goes, the Black Dragon gang will find her. Lip decided to liquidate the gang, but Kat began to dissuade him. Our hero reassured his friend by saying that he was not going to die. Elin was surprised that Lip wanted to get an advance earlier. The young woman offered him 6 months' salary and joked about the guy getting someone pregnant. Seeing a large amount of money, Kat was surprised. She was wondering where her friend got so much money from. Lip said with a smile that this was his income and offered her to take as much as she needed. All the events left our hero very tired, but he still came to the place where the Black Dragon gang operates. The guy suggested that the verification process was strict. When they approached the entrance, the guy was searched and scanned through a metal detector. Entering the casino, Lip decided to find a target to bankrupt, but the goals themselves were found and they offered him to play. Laughing, the guy pretended to be a fool and asked to teach him how to play. The first game was poker, where Lip got a royal flush. Our hero was very lucky and he won. Lip's attention was drawn to shouts from the side. The arrival of the Black Dragon gang caused a commotion. The guy was glad that he didn't have to do anything, and the goal came to him on its own. Then the gang leader was called out to, attracting his attention. One of the visitors rushed at the man, surprising everyone. The gang members rushed to defend their boss, who didn't understand what the hell was going on. The man got punched in the face for his behavior. The gang members began to beat the man for daring to attack their boss. But suddenly the men were stopped by a young man who stood up for his father. The bald man promised to kill the child too. The boy began to shake with fear. But before the bald man could strike, our hero intercepted his hand, protecting the child. The man was furious that he was interrupted and wanted to know who dared. But instead of an answer, he received a kick in the face. The enemy's impact on the floor caused dust to rise. Another gang member attacked from behind. The injured man, Nate, warned Lip of the danger. The knife was already above his head, and it seemed that everything would end right now. Our hero turned around, and the enemy received a hit from the spinning wheel, but unfortunately not in the head. The blow made the opponent bite his tongue, and his glasses flew off, revealing the hellish pain in his eyes. The impact on the floor raised dust again. The knife continued to somersault in the air. The next moment the weapon fell, handle first, into the guy's palm. While the henchmen were fighting, the boss himself escaped, which angered our hero. Suddenly, a fire extinguisher fell to the floor with a crash. The Steel members thanked God that Lip didn't beat them up. At that time, it was already evening outside. Nate fell to his knees before his savior in gratitude. Lip hurried to help the man up. The guy became curious why Nate was looking for the Black Dragon. The man said that his wife committed suicide when they were short of money. Together with his son, Nate fell to his knees and asked for help on the spot. The guy promised to help the guys. Nate and his son were very happy to have such an ally. Lip promised that even if he didn't succeed, he would try. The kind words made the boys cry even more. Soon Lip said goodbye to his new acquaintances. At that very second, the guy received a call. But before the young man could answer, Elin started yelling at him, and Lip realized that this was the end for him. After some time, our hero was already at the Bloss mansion. The journey from the casino to the house took only half an hour, so everything should be fine. Suddenly the guy noticed someone. It was a homeless man whom the young man met very often. Without thinking, the young man handed a large bill to his old acquaintance. The man didn't answer, he just looked. The devil himself was waiting for him in the house, and he wanted to know where Lip had been all this time. The young man began to calm the girl down by massaging her shoulders. The guy quietly made his way into his room, quickly closing the door. Aylin demanded that the young man return and explain himself. But he understood that if he came out, it would be a corpse. Lip exhaled heavily. Soon the evening gave way to night, and the moon appeared in the sky and was visible from the bedroom window. Sharik was finally glad to get out of his friend's jacket. When asked if the creature wanted a drink, the guy agreed. So without thinking, Lip poured himself a glass of good wine. But first, the guy was interested in how Sharik could enter his body and use energy. The creature quickly told everything. But it was necessary to offer to try Sharik, who was offended. Lipu still had to give up a bottle of wine to conduct his experiments. Our hero warned his friend to drink more slowly. Having drunk the entire contents of the bottle, Sharik was happy. Before the young man could take his friend, he seeped into his hand. A bluish circle appeared in the hand. The guy made an effort to concentrate. And then he used the moonbeam, and a wave of blue light burst out of his hand. But the power was too great for our hero due to ignorance. The beam went beyond the house, hitting the trees, after which the poor trunk became injured. Lip's nose started bleeding from the effort. The next day the boys went to school, even though they hadn't had enough sleep. Suddenly something caught the young lady's attention. Or rather, the broken tree made her wonder what happened. The boys entered the school grounds with the bell ringing. Lip hurried the girl so as not to be too late for class. Suddenly on the way, they came across Lip's ex-girlfriend, Lin. The young man did not answer. Elin stepped forward, shielding the guy with her body, calling Lin auntie. The girl shared that she will soon become a university teacher, thanks to her sugar daddy. Elin wanted to pounce on her, but Lip stopped her. Without saying anything else, the boys walked away. Suddenly, the guy's attention was drawn to a conversation nearby. They confessed their feelings to Cece's teacher. The girl said that she is not interested in a relationship at the moment. The man did not agree with this answer, so he grabbed her hand. Cece tried to bring the man to his senses and asked him to let her go. The man's hand was intercepted. It was Lip, but he promised to beat the nonsense out of the man who was harassing women. Ethan was furious that some brat interfered. But a moment later, the man screamed in pain from the capture. The guy asked if everything that was happening was legal. Ethan was exhausted from the pain. Cece began to worry about her student's condition. The boy asked the teacher not to communicate with such men next time. But then the guy was called out and told that Elin had been kidnapped. The action took place on N Street. The place confused our hero. The door to the chess room opened with a tug of the handle. Before Lip could even enter, they rushed at him with a bat. The weapon broke after receiving the blow. The hooligan was surprised by such actions. Lip didn't feel any emotions. The young man was immediately attacked by other members of the kidnapping group. The knife rushed at great speed to wound the enemy. But despite the speed, Lip stopped the weapon with 2 fingers. and then he broke off the tip altogether. The other guy pointed a gun at our hero. Lip approached closely, frightening the kidnappers, but at the same time provoking them. Covered in sweat, the young man sent Lipa to hell. A shot followed. The bullet hit our hero right in the shoulder. But instead of a wound, there was only torn clothing and a burn mark. The enemy fell on his butt out of fear. The boy got scared and started screaming that the devil was in front of him. Lip began to search and knock down all the doors to find the young lady. And in one of the rooms sat a tied-up young lady. The guy admired the fact that the girl looked so defenseless. The kidnappers were severely beaten. The girl with her mouth closed asked for help. But there were 3 more participants in the kidnapping in the room. The guys started demanding that their friend be released, or they would blow Lip's brains out. Mark started shouting at them not to mess with this monster. But the youths only laughed. Still, money was more important to the guys than their friendship. While the boys were chatting, Lip threw a couple of knucklebones in their direction. Thanks to them, the weapons were knocked out of the teenagers' hands. And then, at the speed of light, our hero scattered all his opponents. The boys groaned in pain. One of the teenagers began to ask for forgiveness and promised not to do it again. Lip reminded him that Phil had just threatened to shoot him. The boy began to make excuses that his hand was simply itchy and he wanted to scratch it. Lip grabbed the young man's hand. The next moment, the little arm was broken. Our hero also gave the others a broken arm to keep them company so they wouldn't itch. After the guy, there were several questions that the children crying in pain could answer. Lipu was curious about who ordered Aylin's kidnapping. The guys unanimously answered that it was Luca. Our hero did not understand who the youths were talking about, to which one of them explained that it was Father Bob. The guy was angry that they decided to teach him a lesson by kidnapping a girl who wasn't his fault. Phil didn't know the reason for such actions, and then he started yelling that they didn't know the truth and asked for mercy. The last question was about what gang they were from, and the answer was that they were from the Dragon's Head gang. After all the questions, Lip released the young lady. She threw herself into the guy's arms as a sign of gratitude. Lip also hugged the girl, saying that it was his duty to protect her. Afterwards, they went home. After seeing the girl home, Lip went home. At the reception desk, the guy asked where Bob's room was. After answering, he went straight to it. With the help of his sight, he saw through walls. Lip saw that the father and son were shamelessly dressing up as a young nurse. In response to his father's concerns, Bob replied that he was fine. The man became indignant that Lip should die for daring to bully his son. Tom said that he had prepared everything, and when the guy goes to save Elin, he will die, but the son can do whatever he wants with the girl. Bob was worried that our hero might go to the police instead of personally saving the girl. Our hero became furious at what he heard. Bob and his father laughed like movie villains who think they've already won. Suddenly, the door of the room opened. The guy assumed that the inhabitants would be surprised. Tom fell silent in amazement. But then he started shouting why Lip was in the ward and not saving Elin. Hearing about 20 people with weapons, the man became confused. Afterwards, he started shouting that it was revenge, but our hero decided to attack. The blow sent the man flying a fair distance. Bob grabbed a stick and decided to help his father by attacking him from behind. But the attack was unsuccessful. Lip intercepted one end, and then he hit with the other end. Bob hit the wall. Lipa was more angry that the enemy said something bad about the young lady, but not having received an answer, our hero slapped his opponent. Tom crawled on all fours to help his son. The man urged our hero to stop and not hit his son. But Lip said that it didn't matter to him whose son or whose daughter it was. In a rage, Tom promised to kill our hero if he survived. Lip said without emotion that these threats were impressive, and he wanted to see it. The young man immediately struck Bob, breaking a couple of ribs. The enemy doubled over in pain. Tom got up and took the water cooler. Afterwards, he rushed at the enemy. Lip immediately noticed the attack, but was not particularly worried. Screaming with resentment and anger, the man threw his weapon at our hero. Lip deftly dodged the blow, but not the stream of water. The man realized that it was a mistake, and now he would get it in full. There was a knock on the door from the other side. A voice outside caught Tom's attention. The man immediately began asking for help, shouting that there was a killer in the room. But in a few moves, Lip neutralized Tom. Bob began to ask that our hero not approach his father, but he realized that this was a mistake, and Lip's attention switched to the guy himself. When Tom woke up, he saw that his son was being beaten again. Afterwards, Lip asked why. When thinking up the plan, the man didn't think about the possible consequences. But finally, our hero decided to kick Bob's leg, breaking it, causing the young man to wince in pain. Bob's face twisted from the hellish pain in his limbs. Our hero was glad to see his enemies suffer. As soon as Lip left the room, a nurse called out to him. The young man looked back at the call, but the dialogue did not take place, so he hastened to leave. Soon our hero reached the Blossom Mansion. Before Lip could enter, Elin stopped him. The young lady started yelling at him and asking if he had really gone to see his ex, to which she received the answer that there was no fake there. Elin fell silent when our hero reminded him that he sort of has a personal life. Afterwards, the lady disappeared. Soon evening came. Mary said that Nate meant nothing to her, and neither did his threats. Lip suspected that the sexy lady was hiding something. Afterwards, the lady was interested in how the investigation was progressing. Lip reported that he had been following Company C, but there was nothing suspicious. The question of whether our hero could swim discouraged him. Mary suggested taking a little swim to relax. Lip was confused and didn't know what to say. To prevent the guy from leaving, the lady said that swimming next to her would also be considered protection. The woman didn't mind if our hero went skinny dipping since he didn't have any swimming trunks. The guy blushed at this statement. He himself was against such a proposal. The embarrassed young man nevertheless went out to the pool. Mary was already in the water and enjoying herself. Noticing the bodyguard, the woman called him into the water. The guy thought for a few more seconds, and then he jumped into the water anyway. Lip frolicked in the water like a child. But then he bumped into someone's chest. It was Elin. She was angry that the guy wasn't looking where he was swimming. The young man's gaze was riveted to the young lady's chest, irritating her with this. Lip wanted to justify himself, but Mary said that everything was fine and he could continue swimming. The young lady was angry that the young man was looking after her mother. Without giving the guy a chance to justify himself, the girl continued to egg him on. The guy realized that the family was very strange, because he touched his daughter's body, and the mother said that everything was fine. Now he was looking at the woman, and the girl asked if her mother was hot and sexy. The next day, our hero was walking around the campus. Suddenly he stopped and looked to the side. The guy's attention was drawn to Cece's teacher, who was talking to someone on the phone. And then something terrible happened. The girl broke into a concrete fence. It was suicide. Without thinking, the young man jumped into the water to save the teacher. Having grabbed it more comfortably, he began to climb up. Having pulled her out of the water, Lip carefully placed her on the ground. Realizing that she was unconscious, he apologized to the girl, and he began to unbutton her suit. This was necessary to open the way to the chest. Afterwards, the guy started doing heart massage. Realizing that massage was not enough, Lip added artificial respiration. And lo and behold, Cece began to open her eyes. Having taken a sitting position, the girl looked at the guy like a child. Afterwards, she threw herself into the arms of our hero, listening to a lecture that there is a way out of any problem, and it is not suicide. Due to the close physical contact, Cece's breasts were pressed against the guy. Our hero gets excited from such actions. But then his attention was drawn to the fact that something was stuck between Cece's breasts. Realizing where her student was looking, the teacher blushed. But as soon as the young man touched her chest, the girl jumped back. That something was a fish that Lip pulled out while asking why Cece wanted to commit suicide. The teacher said that the problem is her father, who is deeply in debt due to gambling. Cece was called because her father couldn't pay and was kidnapped. While telling the story that the bandits wanted the girl to sell her body to pay off her debt, she burst into tears. Our hero asked a completely logical question: why didn't the teacher contact the police? Upon hearing that the Dragon Gang was involved, Lip was furious. Our hero demanded that the girl hand over this matter to him. Cece didn't understand what the young man could do, since he was still a student. The guy asked her to trust him, and the girl agreed. Afterwards, he asked where Cece's father was being held, and she replied that it was possible that he was in the center of the baths. Lip sent the girl home, and he himself will go and break faces. Then he turned around and walked away. Cece asked for the guy to come back alive. Lip said that there was no need to disturb him, and that we could expect good news from him. Soon the young man disappeared like the wind. After some time, he was already near the baths where he was met by young girls. Suddenly, one of them grabbed Lip by the arm. Another girl came up right away, and they started inviting the guy into the bathroom, since it was hot outside, and he was still wearing his outerwear. Lip didn't waste any time and asked if Brother Long had arrived. One of the girls said that the man had not arrived yet, and therefore they had time to play. Lip jumped back when the stranger's hand touched his intimate area. The guy said that he would go out and wait for Brother Long outside. But then some girls of easy virtue appeared. They began to surround our hero. The young man went on the run to avoid falling for the charms of the young ladies. But then he stood up and pointed to 3 girls who could go with him. One of the chosen ones immediately began pestering Lip, telling him to help him take a shower and serve him properly. As soon as he entered the room, our hero started running again. The girls suggested that he secretly took Viagra. Here, Lip's ear was attracted by the dialogue in another room. Without wasting any time, he activated ultravision. There were 2 men and 1 hostage behind the wall. The bald man heard that Cece was a famous beauty in their area, and if she spent the night with him, she would ask the boss to reduce the debt. Not wanting to listen to any more nonsense, our hero knocked down the door. The young man asked if the men were having fun. Neo was furious that they let the stranger in and threw the chicken leg he was chewing at him. Lip deftly dodged the enemy's attack. Here Dan asked his older brother to leave the unwanted guest with him. The bandit attacked Lip with a bat. Our hero jumped, and he found himself near the chair where Cece's father, Matt, was tied up. Dan hit Lip on the head, but the bat bounced off. And soon she fell to the floor, bent in different directions. Without wasting any time, Lip broke the bandit's arm with a kick. Then, out of nowhere, a man with a gun appeared. Before he could fire, our hero activated the moonlight blade. The enemy's legs were shackled as if in shackles. In an instant, it was broken. Lip grabbed Matt by the collar of his shirt and dragged him out of the room. The man did not understand who was in front of him, but he ran. Before our heroes had time to escape, guards with weapons were waiting for them at the door. Using the power of the moon, the guy activated some kind of shield, but still pinned Matt to the floor. Afterwards, he closed the doors to their room. The guy asked Matt not to stick his head out of the room. Lip was frightening to the man. But still, Matt thought about escaping. After a while, Lip returned with his shirt. The man sat obediently waiting for him. Coming out of hiding, Matt was met with a scene where all the guards were either unconscious or all killed. Our hero asked not to stare because they needed to escape. Grabbing the man by the shoulder, he ran towards the window. Matt was scared when he received confirmation that they would be jumping down. He wasn't sure he was ready to jump from the 3rd floor for his own safety. But without listening to the end, Lip grabbed him by the clothes and jumped out the window. While Matt was screaming, our hero landed successfully, but the guards started shooting at the fugitives. Already at home, hugging his daughter, Matt promised not to gamble anymore. Afterwards, with tears in her eyes, Cece thanked Lip and apologized for disturbing him. Matt decided to marry his daughter to his savior, to which he received the answer that he was her student. The man didn't see a problem with this, and he would have been glad to see Lip as a son-in-law. Our hero asked to quickly pack his things so that he could take them to the hotel for safety. The next day, Cece brought food for Lip, which attracted Ellen's attention. With a smile on his face, our hero said that he had already eaten and asked to contact the girl if she suddenly had problems. Here the young lady attracted the guy's attention with a nudge to his elbow. She was furious that Cece's teacher started to treat Lip well. The guy lied that he had no idea what she was talking about. They were surprised by Ellen's words about Lip and Cece having a fling. Our hero asked the lady to watch her language. After a few lessons, our hero was playing basketball. I understand he heard the ball shouting to come out for a showdown. Cece asked Lip to hurry and run away. Our hero simply kicked the ball to the side. Cece was surprised why the guy didn't run away. Henry came close, but what she heard was that he should leave the teacher alone. Otherwise, Lipina would guarantee the integrity of his legs. The bandit pointed his gun at our hero, listening to Lip's words that he was taking on too much. Our hero didn't even bat an eye when he saw the weapon. Having scattered everyone in different directions, he picked up Cece in his arms and walked away. Lip asked Cece to run away. He could take care of himself, the girl agreed. Our hero's attention shifted from the teacher to the attacker. Henry quickly stood up and again pointed the gun at the young man. Shot after shot sounded from the shower of the pistol. Lip deftly dodged all the attacks. Without wasting any more time, he rushed to run straight towards his opponents. A couple of seconds later, he was already standing close to Henry. Lip delivered a blow to the skull with his favorite spinning move. Remind me from the group. They all attacked together. Our hero activated the energy of moonlight, and after a couple of movements, all the opponents were already flying in different directions. The schoolgirls who were watching the fight began to praise Lip, shouting about how much they loved him. It seems that only Aylin was not happy with the young man's victory. Soon, Cece's teacher came over and thanked the student. The young lady's sadness turned to rage. She continued to shout that there was something between the teacher and Lip. The teacher, with a smile, only advised Aylin to explain everything, since the guy's opinion was important to the girl. Lip didn't believe it. He was of the opinion that the girl was just playing a prank to confuse him. But that was impossible. A moment of silence. Afterwards, he decided to catch up with the young lady. After some time, our hero was called to the director's office. The young man asked why he had been called. The man heard rumors that the guy had started a fight. Lip hastened to clarify the situation, but the director did not want to listen to anything. Our hero realized that something was wrong. The principal said that high school is a place for learning, so fighting is prohibited. Lip, without a twinge of conscience, asked how much money the gang had paid the man. The director was furious at the young man's impudent behavior. Upon hearing about the gang, the man began to deny everything and shout that it was all a lie. The guy found it doubtful that a gang had come to the school while the principal was sitting quietly in his office. The man started shouting that the guy should be so self-confident. Sooner or later he would crawl to him. Lip noticed that he was flattering himself, and then he left the office altogether. The director was furious that everything had turned against him, and the young man really did not listen to him. One of the teachers said that this incident should be treated with great caution. The man noted that Lip was not easy prey, but he would not be a simpleton either. At this time, Elin and Lip were already outside the school. But then the young man felt something and grabbed the girl by the hand, pulling the young lady towards him, catching the dart. Elin misunderstood the young man and pushed him away, shouting that the guy was a pervert. But Lip didn't pay attention to her words. His attention was focused on the poisoned dart. After some time, the guy felt another shot. The killer's target was the young lady Elin. The guy quickly moved towards the girl to intercept the attack. Due to contact with the young man's hand, the dart changed course. If the guy had been a second late, tragedy would have been inevitable. The crowd of onlookers began to admire our hero. Lip ordered the girl to leave because it was dangerous. Elin blushed when the guy took her hand. The girl began to imagine a romantic atmosphere. But Lip at this time thought that the professional killer was also cautious. Without thinking, the young man activated ultravision. Thanks to his ability, the guy saw where the next shot was coming from. The attack came from the crowd. Lip realized that he needed to act immediately. To avoid tragedy, the guy hugged Elin. And then they even took to the air. The young man decided to stop the dart with the power of moonlight, which he could use during the day thanks to the ball. But no attack came from the hand. It dawned on Lip that Sharik hadn't given any power, meaning he hadn't worked. Having gathered all his remaining strength, the guy directed it at the dart. Because of the lunar power, the dart broke and hit the target. Because they were in the air, the guy was able to see where the shooter was. Lipa was angered that they were considered targets. He landed carefully and let go of Elin. Afterwards, he asked the young lady to wait for him and not go anywhere. In a moment, our hero was already reaching out to grab the shooter. Despite the enemy's weight, the guy easily lifted him into the air, as if he were a feather. When the weapon fell out of the guy's hands, our hero immediately broke it. Then he threw the young man over himself, pressing him to the ground with all his strength. Without thinking, Lip swung his sword to attack. The blow landed directly on the opponent's chest. Looking towards the onlookers, Lip decided to change the scenery. Grabbing the guy by the jacket, our hero carried them over. A dark alley was chosen where no one walks. Without giving up on his attempts to kill our hero, the mercenary threw a knife at him. Lip dodged easily. The next weapon was a pistol, but with quick movements of his foot, Lip knocked it out of his opponent's hands. Our hero was only interested in one thing: who sent the killer. The boy said that Lip shouldn't waste his energy on interrogation. He wouldn't say anything anyway. While our hero was trying to get answers to the questions that interested him, the enemy pulled out some kind of jar. Having heard the threats, the killer only smiled and offered Lip to find out the results. Our hero was a little annoyed that the enemy was talking all sorts of nonsense. Lip wanted to grab the guy and start to torture him with force, but he noticed that he opened the jar and drank the contents. Seeing that the guy started shaking, Lip became slightly taken aback. Soon the mercenary fell to the ground unconscious, foam coming from his mouth and blood coming from his nose. Lipa became curious about what prompted the young man to commit suicide. Without wasting any time, our hero decided to find out who was in front of him and began looking for an ID. But not finding anything, he went away thinking that it would be difficult for them. Approaching Aylin, he immediately heard the question of what happened to the killer. The girl was wondering whether Lip killed him or whether he managed to escape. After some time, they arrived at the mansion. As soon as the children entered, Mary asked if the young man was injured, to which she received the answer that everything was fine. Aylin reproached the guy for not always being with her, otherwise he would not have been kidnapped. But the mother immediately reined in her daughter. A quarrel ensued between mother and daughter, with the argument being that Aylin would have been dead long ago if she had been destined to live a short life without attacks. Lip just thought about the fact that the young lady didn't look like she believed in fate. After sending her daughter to bed, Mary ordered the bodyguard to follow her. They went to the dance hall. The woman asked the young man to wait because she needed to change her clothes. Soon Mary came out in a tracksuit. While warming up, the woman said that she felt a little uneasy. Before it seemed that it would be much easier, but now she was so scared. She was worried about Aylin. Lip asked her not to worry. He would do everything to protect her from danger. Mary assumed that in the past, she had been quite a sinner, since now she constantly felt when something bad was coming. The young man was surprised when he heard about the sinner. The guys didn't talk about anything else. The next day, all the students were gathered in the assembly hall. Before his speech, the director checked the microphone. The man didn't beat around the bush and said that the meeting was organized thanks to one young man. Our hero was asked to come up on stage. Slowly, Lip walked up onto the stage as he was told. The man started shouting that the young man was obliged to comply with all the rules established by the university, and for failure to comply with them, our hero will be held responsible for the fight that occurred. So this was the first offense. The director suspended the boy from classes for 6 months to cover his academic leave. Everyone started shouting that it was unfair. Cece also stood up for her student, because the director did not know what really happened. Lip asked the teacher to stop arguing because she could get it too. The director scolded Cece because, as a teacher, she should have watched her words and not disputed the rector's decision. Nut Elin came up on stage saying that everything was a lie. The director was furious that some little girl dared to lecture him. The girl was beside herself with rage and wanted to attack the man, but Lip held her back. The director began to cover himself with his hands and sent the girl on academic leave for a year. The young man did not argue any further and simply agreed. Afterwards, he began to leave the stage, taking Elin with him. The girl wasted no time making an obscene gesture and making a face. And so, a couple of minutes later, they were leaving the university campus. Then, out of nowhere, a girl flew out at the guy. Without thinking, Lip wanted to strike, regardless of who was in front of him. But then something seemed to stop him looking closer. He saw Catherine. The guy apologized, saying that there had been a mistake, and he didn't recognize her. But Elin didn't understand who had caused their stop. Lip quickly introduced the girls to each other. Kat said that she had been looking for Lip for a long time, but to no avail, and now they met by chance. The conversation turned to work, and the guy's friend suggested going to celebrate receiving his salary, so they could chat. The guy agreed, but then Elin intervened, reminding her that he was going to see her out, and hinting that he shouldn't forget about his responsibilities. Lip asked Kat for the address later. Now he needed to take Elin home. After seeing the young lady off, Lip immediately went to meet his friend. Kat was wondering who that girl was, if I was really his girlfriend. The guy said that she was just a classmate. In fact, Catherine had business with our hero. In fact, as soon as the girl received her salary, she immediately quit. Lipu was interested in why the girl quit. The girl thanked the guy for helping her find a job, but the boss was a real pervert. When asked where she planned to get a job now, the girl honestly answered that she didn't know. The girl agreed to the offer to be his assistant. When Lip opened his own business, she was ready to work for our hero, even for free. The guy's obvious advantages were agility and X-ray vision. With such data, he would have been suitable for the work of a detective. After thinking it over, Lip decided to become a private detective, and Kat would handle business contacts and advertising. The girl was happy with this idea, because knowing the guy, she would definitely be successful. After the get-together, the young man returned to the mansion. While walking around the house, Lip noticed a girl with suitcases. As it turned out, it was a new driver. Mary revealed that it was true when she realized that Lip was doubtful. Ellen was curious about what happened to the past. He had only worked there for a short time, but he drove a car superbly. Mary reported that he was worried about his safety and quit. Afterwards, the woman approached the new driver, telling her to start work tomorrow, but Lana asked to start work today. Mary agreed, stating that the mansion was at their disposal. Having thanked Lana, she went to take away her things. As soon as the girl left, Mary asked Lip what he thought of her, but the guy said that the girl didn't really look like a driver. The woman confirmed the guy's assumption, but the only thing that was important to her was the ability to drive a car. Elin didn't understand why her mother needed such a seductive female driver. When asked about envy, the girl blushed and said that she was simply worried that there would be no peace in the house because of her. Mary thought all this was nonsense. Since the boys were no longer a teacher, the woman wished them a good rest. As she was leaving, Mary said that something terrible had recently happened in the area. Everyone was extremely worried, and asked the heroes to be careful. Having heard about something terrible, the guy became interested. The woman heard that there had been terrorist attacks, and what was noteworthy was that all the victims had had their carotid artery bitten. Hearing about the carotid artery, Elin became inflamed with spirit, saying that they died from blood loss. The girl remembered that zombies had this style of killing. Mary said that everything her daughter said was nonsense, and that zombies don't exist, but she still asked them to be careful on the street. Lip thought that everything indicated that the murder was committed by a zombie, among whom the young man was only familiar with Lynn. The young man suggested that it could be her. After a while, Lip looked into Lana's room. The young man came in to meet his new neighbor, but Lana ignored him. The whole situation made the young man feel awkward. Lip asked why the girl was so rude and could have at least responded to the greeting, but the girl still didn't answer. Lana didn't understand what the guy was expecting, a warm welcome. The guy noticed how much coldness there was in the words. When Lip left, he left the last word for himself, saying that the girl had a great ass and tits. After leaving the room, Elin met the guy, saying that he had become cooler, responding rudely to rudeness. Lip asked the girl to stop because a fight with her would not force him to admit defeat. Soon the young man went away on business, leaving the young lady. But when Elin asked where he went and what he was doing, she received the answer that it was a secret. Having entered the room, the young man called someone. Lip called Kat and said that everything was almost ready for the agency. Having received the address, Catherine immediately arrived at the meeting place. The name of the company was Private Investigations, and the only employees were Lip and Kat. The girl was the internal boss, and the boy was the external one. The boys went inside the building. Kat nevertheless thanked the young man once again for caring about her. The guy said that if the girl wants to thank him, she should become a good boss, which touched Cat. Having finished all his business, Lip went home. The guy was glad that he finally found a job for his girlfriend. Suddenly screams were heard from around the corner. Our hero headed to help in the direction from which the people were fleeing. The young man did not understand what had happened. The guy's gaze was met by a monster that was hunting the guy. To catch up with the girl, the monster pushed off from the pole, leaving a dent on it. In an instant, the monster flew into the air and stretched out one hand to grab its victim. The girl covered her head with her hand out of fear. The monster threw away everything that came to hand. Our hero immediately recognized the zombie. The monster grabbed the girl. To save the victim, Lip pushed off the ground. The girl was already fighting for the consulate when our hero was practically nearby. But it was all useless. The monster bit into her neck. Blood flowed down the body, some onto the ground. Lip did not lose hope of saving the girl and hit the zombie in the stomach. The monster had tough skin. Our hero found himself behind the monster. While the monster was eating its victim, Lip wondered if he really was seeing a zombie in front of him. Apparently his actions are those of a zombie. They are completely different from Lip's. The guy stood up. Then he called out to the monster. The zombie, hearing the response, let go of his lunch. A moment of silence, and then the terrible face turned its attention to our hero. Lip didn't understand why the monster was laughing. It suddenly dawned on the guy that he was the next victim. The zombie slowly walked towards our hero. Lin said that Lip was the owner of bloody flesh, but the guy did not understand what this meant. Our hero wanted to talk to the monster, but the monster wasn't going to listen to his food. The young man tried to start a conversation by asking him questions, but the zombie didn't want to talk and decided to finish off our hero right away. The monster was too aggressive. The zombie used all his strength to push off, and then he attacked our hero from the air. Lip barely managed to block, and then pushed off and also attacked. The young man put his hands forward to knock down the monster. Once he was close, he grabbed the zombie by the hands, but the zombie could not be brought down. But suddenly the monster grabbed Lip's hand. These techniques greatly surprised our hero. The young man hit his opponent with the bend of his elbow. The monster began to scream in pain. A gust of wind from the scream almost carried the young man away. However, Lip couldn't resist and flew away. Dust rose up in the place where the guy landed. The asphalt broke under our hero. Without wasting any time, Lip began to rise with a jump. Having successfully risen, the young man quickly found his opponent. My gaze immediately caught the alien monster. Before the attack, the young man thought about how to destroy the enemy. Lip realized that he couldn't defeat the monster in close combat. The monster was already furious. The zombie rose up to launch an aerial attack. Lip also rose into the air, but a little higher than his opponent. Lip activated the Moonblade technique. A blast of moonlight struck the monster, and he threw the zombies from the sky to the earth, raising dust. Lip hoped that would be the end of it, but suddenly the zombie stood up again. Our hero was curious how the monster managed to survive his Moonblade. Without thinking, the monster rushed at the guy again. This time the guy dodged, but the next one ran away and he was wounded in the side. Lip tried to stop the monster with words, but everything was to no avail, and the guy received a kick to the chest area. Lip flew back several meters from the impact and hit his back. Pain immediately gripped my body. The monster, without taking a break, began to attack again. The attack landed again on the chest. The blow left a dent on the young man's body. Lip's ribs were broken. He had already begun to think that this was the end, but was it really so? But the boy's consciousness told him that it was still too early to die. The zombie was already looming over our hero, drooling on the carcass. But the guy was not going to give up, and so he collected lunar energy. The blow landed in the abdominal area. As his hand touched the monster's skin, Lip added lunar power. The monster flew back from such a powerful attack. After landing, he traveled a few more meters. When Lip got up, he couldn't believe that he had managed to use the energy of the Milky Ball. It was decided to leave before the monster woke up. The zombie lay unconscious for some time. Soon he came back to life again. A deafening roar echoed throughout the area. The young man walked home slowly. Lip was going to thank his savior with wine as soon as he returned. Suddenly his own body attracted attention. The young man realized that he felt no pain, and the wounds disappeared. Since the wounds on his hands had disappeared, our hero assumed that the ones on his chest should also disappear. He lifted his shirt and saw that there was nothing on it, and he looked like new. Lip was very pleased that he was regenerating. Soon evening came. As he approached the house, the young man saw the same old man. The young man was glad to see his old acquaintance. But instead of greeting him, the elder asked if he had been there before. Lip lied that he just fell. The words that they had to say goodbye really surprised our hero. To be convincing, he asked the elder again. The guy began to ask the old man if something had happened to him and began to offer his help. The elder only said that judging a person's nature by his personality is indeed too absurd and careless. As a parting gift, The man left behind a trinket as a memento of himself. It was something like a medallion, only made of timber. The young man put on the gift with pleasure. The man told Lip to take care of the gift, and it would protect him from evil things. Lip also wanted to leave a gift, but the man refused. Afterwards, our hero simply watched as his friend left. The old man decided to find out the young man's name before parting. Lip shouted his name so that the elder would definitely hear and remember it. Soon the man disappeared as if he had never been there. Soon the guy reached the Bossum Villa. Aylin met him. The young lady immediately started screaming and asking where the guy was. But as soon as she saw him, she immediately fell silent. Anger gave way to alarm because of the blood on the bodyguard's clothes. Aylin Lip said that he had a fight with a bad man, and it was that man's blood. The young lady breathed a sigh of relief. But the question about the Dragon Gang surprised our hero. To change the subject, the young man stroked the girl's head, embarrassing her with the question that she was worried about him. Lip soon went into the room saying that he was thinking too much. Aylin was curious about what he was thinking, so she offered a penalty for every thought he told her. The young man did not understand why he had to tell her what was going on in his head. The blushing girl wanted to yell at her bodyguard again. Approaching the room, the young man remembered and asked what had happened to the driver yesterday. Aylin replied that Lena had some problems at home, so she would only be with them tomorrow. When asked about the check, the girl replied that Lena was an orphan and grew up in an orphanage. Lip didn't understand that since the girl was an orphan, Aylin reported that she had problems in the family. But instead of answering, the girl asked what kind of thing was hanging around the guy's neck. Lip replied that the dome was a gift from a friend. Aylin asked to see the gift. The guy took off the pendant and gave it to her. The young lady liked the thing very much, so she asked to give it to her. The guy apologized and said that he couldn't and offered to buy her another one. Aylin was upset and asked if the woman had given him this pendant. Lip reported that he received the pendant from an elderly master. Embarrassed that the gift was not from a woman, the girl smiled and told her to take care of the pendant. The guy's friend Luna was already looking into the room. As soon as they were left alone, Sharik immediately showed himself. The young man thanked his friend for saving his life. The balloon was happy and immediately flew to the bottle of alcohol. Lip had no idea where he came from, why he sang so much, and why his liver hadn't fallen off yet. Our hero allowed his friend to drink until he was happy. Sharik immediately began to spit a waltz with the bottle. The whole picture touched our hero very much. He wanted to say something else, but he realized that Sharik would not listen to him. The guy's thoughts were again occupied by a dark zombie that was very strong. Without wasting any time, Tun decided to turn to the scroll. Opening it, he began to study the contents again. My attention was drawn to a picture of a zombie standing in the sun. The guy suggested that you should stand in the sun, but zombies are more afraid of its rays than you are. The next picture was collecting rainwater. Others spoke of understanding and fire. The last picture with the weapon in hand misled our hero even more. It all looked as if Lip had a safe full of money, but he didn't know the password. The next morning, Aylin burst into the guy's bathroom without knocking. The young man was very surprised and began calling the girl a pervert. Seeing the guy in his underwear, the girl blushed, but asked him to take her to the library. The young man asked the young lady why she was there, but she went to leave the room. On the way, Aylin met Lena, who offered to take the lady to the library. The sun was shining brightly outside. Thanks to the milky ball, Lip was no longer afraid of the sun. After the battle with the dark zombie and the subsequent merging with the milky ball, the young man did not know how he would react to the sun, so he decided to test it. He carefully held one hand out to the sunlight and waited for further action, but nothing happened. The boy couldn't believe that even sunlight no longer affected him. Seeing Lip standing with his hand outstretched, Aylin became angry. The young man exhaled before taking further action. Afterwards, he began to move forward carefully. Soon he came out completely towards the sun, but nothing happened, and he assumed that the problem was in the pendant. To test his guess, he began to take off the gift. In order not to lose it, I hung it on a tree branch, and again he went out to bathe in the rays of the sun. But the result was expected. He began to get burns. Aylin appeared on the street with her driver. She was interested in what her bodyguard was doing and why his hands were smoking. The guy started making excuses that she imagined it. Lana's attention was drawn to the pendant that was still hanging on the branch. Lip quickly snatched his decoration from the stranger's hands. Now it was his treasure, thanks to which he could calmly not be afraid of the sun. Soon the boys went to the library. Aylin said that if the driver gets bored, she can go for a walk, and the girl will tell her by phone when they are going home. Lip didn't understand why the young lady was rude to him, but always nice to Dana, he considered it unfair. Lip asked Sharik if he could hit the girl once, but was refused. Soon the guys approached the elevator. But as soon as the doors opened, they saw a crowd of people. The guys looked like bandits. Lip covered Aylin with his hand, thereby protecting her. The guys from the elevator showed our hero a photo asking if he knew the girl in it. The photo was of Cece. Aylin also saw the photo. At that time, Lip thought that his father was teaching and had offended the gang again. As he passed by, our hero said that he didn't know the girl in the photo, which surprised Elin. But his attention was drawn to the words that if a man finds her, Cece will be in trouble. Without paying any attention to them, the young man and the girl entered the elevator. The door began to close, but suddenly someone started stopping her from the other side. Lip realized that things were not so calm in the library. When the men opened the doors, they said that the guys looked very familiar. Pointing to the young lady, one of the bandits asked if he had seen her before. The girl tensed up when she was finally recognized. Lip immediately decided to find out from some gang. Hearing shouts that the guy had no right to ask men about this, the young man asked if they knew what kind of guy had saved her last time. The men said they didn't care and it clearly wasn't him. But as soon as one of them realized that it was really Lip, he immediately received a punch to the jaw. While dealing with the bandits, our hero shouted to Elin to go ahead and he would catch up with her. The guy, without thinking, swung his fists, striking his opponents. Soon our hero was surrounded. One of the men realized that Lip was indeed the real devil, so he called on his friends to run away. Realizing that they had not listened to him, the man rushed away. After a while, all the bandits were unconscious. Looking around, the young man noticed someone else. It was an ordinary man calling for help. Passing by Lip, the abbot asked him to get out of the way. When the young man entered the elevator, the stranger slid down the wall. When he reached the right floor, a worried Elin was already waiting for the guy. Taking her by the hand, Lip decided to take her in, since it was not safe for them to be there. Following that, the girl was worried that they did not tell Lana that they had finished. To ensure the safety of the young lady, the guys must come to a place that only they know about. Elin decided to tell the driver anyway, but the guy said that he would take the girl himself. After moving away from the building, the guy began to tear his t-shirt, and then he blindfolded the girl, but she didn't understand why. But the young man said that he would explain everything later. Taking her on his back, the guy promised that he would definitely tell her everything. Then he pushed off and soared into the sky. The gust of wind was strong and fluttered the girl's hair. Elin was curious, so she decided to take a quick look. But as soon as she lifted the bandage a little, she cried out in surprise. The guy asked if she was peeping, to which the girl replied that he had imagined it. Elin became curious about who her bodyguard really was. A few minutes later, they were there. The young lady asked if she could remove the bandage. Having received approval, I did it immediately. The girl looked at the tall buildings. When asked where they were, Lip replied that Elin didn't need to know. The main thing was that it was safe here. Met the guys Catherine. Elin recognized the girl immediately. Leaving his mistress, Lip went to explain things to his friend. This made Elin very angry. Catherine felt embarrassed by such close contact. Lip said that it was time to punish the dragon gang, so he would leave Elin in the office. Kat began to worry about her friend, saying that it was dangerous. The guy was of the opinion that it would be better for him to attack first than to defend himself. Elin was worried that if he didn't succeed, there would be even more problems. Lip agreed and decided to wipe the gang off the face of the earth. The young lady immediately began to say that this was not what she meant and that the guy should not go to the bandits alone. Our hero went to the exit, announcing that he was going to pick up Cece at the hotel. After some time, he was already there. The teacher didn't understand why there was a rush and why she needed to pack her things. Lip said that he would take them to a safe place. Now the gang is searching the city to find her. Cece was interested in the young man's future plans. The guy asked me not to agree and he would take care of everything else. During the investigation, our hero learned the location of several important figures in the gang. The ninth boss was a terrible debauchee at night. He had all sorts of fun in clubs. The leader of the White Elephant gang spends 2/3 of his time either in hot springs or saunas. Due to the large number of Black Dragon doppelgangers, no one knew its location. Today, the young man plans to start implementing his plan. And the first target was the 10th boss. The young man quietly made his way to the second floor of the victim's villa. He carefully jumped up even higher. Looking out the window, he noticed the 9th boss sleeping peacefully with 2 beauties. Soon the girls woke up, and the man offered them a second round of games. The guy didn't want to be a witness to dirty conversations. Afterwards, he entered the room without any indignation, frightening its inhabitants. Lip said that no matter who he is, if a man wants to live, he will have to answer a couple of questions. This arrangement did not suit the 9th, and he pointed the gun at the young man. When the mistresses closed the door, the man told them to shut up, or he would kill them. Our hero said that nothing would happen if he tried to shoot him. The 9th one took the bait and fired, but the bullet bounced off the young man's body. At the point of contact, only a trace and smoke remained. The man did not stop and shot again and again. Seeing that there was no result, he could not believe it, and then our hero decided to attack. The kick landed right in the face. Having fallen to the floor, 9th, out of fear, began to ask what the guy was. Our hero reminded us that he was asking questions and God forbid he didn't like the answers. The man started shouting that he would answer everything and tell everything. The first thing Lip wanted to know was where the black dragon was. The ninth said that he didn't know. The young man didn't like the answer, so he broke his opponent's leg. From the hellish pain, the man began to scream that he really didn't know, and that usually at this time he was on the top floor of the bathing building. The guy asked if he was sure that this was the same black dragon, and not a fake. The girls cried with fear. The ninth did not understand what the stranger was talking about. Our hero didn't like the words again, so he started to mock the straw with his foot. In fact, the man was also not sure that it was a real dragon, and perhaps there was a double. Lip thought that with Ninth's experience, he would be able to identify a real black dragon. The man said that the real one had a black bandage on his belt the size of a coin. It was a symbol of good luck. Lip reminded him that he would die if he lied to him. Finally, our hero delivered one more blow, from which the man flew to the side. The obstacle was one in which cracks appeared from the impact. The young man realized that this was another useless foray. Soon he reached the baths where he was met by a girl. But our hero passed her by. Once inside, his attention shifted. It was a girl who asked for help. The girl lied that her older brother Jay had been kidnapped, and he promised to kill him if she didn't sleep with him. The guys took the elevator up to the 7th floor. The guy agreed to help save his brother. Having reached the required floor, the guy was met by security guards. At this time, a man named Jay was sitting in the office and conducting negotiations. The man in front of Jay asked his boss not to be angry with him. He did everything in his power. The boss wanted to meet the son of the man in front of him since he was studying abroad. The stranger started shouting that it was all a misunderstanding, and that he would do everything in the best possible way. But then Jay was told something. After hearing this, the man was furious. A gun was pointed at the door through which the guest was supposed to enter. And then, after a few seconds, the door began to vibrate. They immediately opened fire on her. But it was all in vain. Our hero didn't have a scratch, and nothing remained of the doors. The guy knocked out the guard with one of the fragments. Jay watched everything that was happening in silence. Then he pulled out a machine gun from under the table, and he pointed the weapon towards our hero. Lip let the guard go, and attacked Jay. In an instant, the young man found himself right next to the mafia boss. The guy noticed that Jay was talking nonsense about there being no animosity between them after he emptied his entire machine gun clip into him. The guards quickly pointed their guns at Lip. The man exhaled and asked what our hero needed, and whether there was any possibility of reaching an agreement. One of the bodyguards ordered the young man to move away from the boss. Lip only picked up the bullet that was near his leg. Jay asked him to calm down, but Lip had already fired a bullet towards the young guy. A sharp pain ran through the body. The bullet hit right in the heart area. Everyone was surprised and scared. Our hero warned that if they threaten him, they will end up the same way. The guards lowered their weapons. Approaching Jay Lip again, he asked if he knew where the black dragon was. But having received the answer that he didn't know, our hero was saddened. The only thing the man knew was where the double was. The location of the dragon itself was unknown to him. Lip realized that both men were telling the truth. The young man then asked where the double could be. After receiving the answer that he was in the casino, Lip said that Jay should pray for the dragon to be there. The young man thought and decided to leave the same gift as he had given to the ninth. Then he kicked him into the wall. The guy was angry that he would have to go to the casino again. After leaving the baths, the young man went to a new address. He was glad that sunlight would no longer be a problem for him. He soon reached his destination. Surprisingly, when Lip walked inside, it was empty. Realizing something was wrong, he activated Ultra Vision, and he saw that they had set up an ambush for him. It was not surprising. Thank God he noticed in time. People even used rocket launchers. The mercenaries were angry that Lip had not yet arrived, in their opinion. One of them showed to be quieter. The other one laughed and couldn't understand how his colleague could believe such nonsense. Lip decided to enter through the window. To avoid these guys, he chose a different path. Without wasting a minute, the young man jumped out of the window. The double didn't understand why our hero ended up in his room. Lip noted that all gangsters seem to love the line, "Why are you here?" The man immediately understood who was in front of him. Lip immediately pounced on the double, and with a jerk, throwing him off the bed, he said that he must know why he came. But the bandit did not understand what the stranger was talking about. Suddenly, the young man felt something. Having managed to dodge, the bullet flew into the double's shoulder. The man started shouting at the guard that he was blind and couldn't see where he was shooting. The young man demanded to speak, otherwise the guard would shoot him again. The double ordered him not to be so brazen and said that if Lip killed him, he would not leave the building alive. The man pushed our hero. The guard fired without thinking, but Lip was able to change the bullet's trajectory. The shell hit the double right in the leg. The young man suggested trying his luck again. The man was tormented by pain. Now he began to understand why the black dragon sent him a beauty. Because it was his last day. The man began to beg for mercy. Just in case, Lip reminded him not to feed him any crap and to answer questions honestly. The girls were waiting for news at the agency. Cece began to calm Elin down, saying that everything would be fine. But the young lady's words about the guy not having a chance made Kat very angry. An argument started between the girls about the relationship. When asked about Kat and Lip's relationship, the girl said that it was none of her business. At this time, the double said that he would tell everything. But then a rocket appeared in the room. Her appearance surprised everyone. Lip jumped to the side while the double watched what was happening. In an instant, he understood everything. An explosion appeared at the place where this man had just been. Everyone began to cover their faces to avoid dust and smoke. One of the guards stated that in the face of danger, he would fight to the end. And a shootout broke out between the mercenaries. The young man realized that the double's guards could not hold back the others for too long. So he collected lunar energy, and he sent her towards the opponents. Everyone flew off in different directions. As a result, nothing remained of the room where the battle took place. Our hero stood in a cloud of dust. Realizing the danger they were in, the remaining people ran away. Looking at this battle, Lip could tell that the black dragon must be nearby. Suddenly someone pushes our hero. The stranger began to get indignant that our hero was standing in the road and not letting anyone pass. Suddenly Lip noticed the spot that Ninth had spoken about. The guy was glad that his guess was correct. Having caught the stranger, the young man began a dialogue about how he should apologize. Soon more guards arrived. Lip understood everything. A loud laugh echoed through the building. Soon everyone went outside as the black dragon wanted. On Lipa Street, people with weapons surrounded him. The young man took off his cap, revealing his face. A second later, the shot was fired. In the place where our hero had just stood, smoke from the rocket rose. Due to the simultaneous attack of all people, the lower floors of the building were covered in red smoke. Because of these actions, something similar to an earthquake occurred. Because the foundation of the building was damaged, which frightened the girls. Kat reported that it didn't feel like an earthquake. Elin began to ask why she decided so. The girl answered that her feelings told her so. Having forgotten all her grievances, the young lady began to pray that everything would be well with Lip. The building finally collapsed. The black dragon was already happy with his victory. The mercenaries began to say that their boss was the strongest. But then our hero emerged from the fire safe and sound. This surprised the black dragon. The guy quickly found himself behind his target. One of the mercenaries pointed a gun at Lip, but behind him there was an explosion. Lip kicked another guard into the fiery mess. Our hero's blow was well placed. After taking a normal position, he asked others about their stupid ideas, but everyone was trembling with fear. Taking the black dragon by the jacket, he suggested playing and asked how he should punish the guy. People began to gather around the scene of the incident. Our hero turned to the security, promising that if they offered ideas for punishment, he would forget all his bad deeds. Suddenly a stone flew at Phil. One of the bodyguards said that he was tired of the young man's therapy. He obeyed him only because he was protecting his younger sister. Others also began to say that they were tired of everything their boss did. But Phil started laughing at those words. The guy was surprised that the workers were so eager to get rid of their problems that they chose the wrong team. And intending to listen to the traitors no longer, the young man stood up. Hearing that the enemy knew about Lip's secret, he tensed up. Without waiting for any more words, our hero attacked. Phil drove some distance, leaving traces behind him. Lip didn't understand what had happened after the attack. He lost 80% of all his accumulated energy. Looking at the enemy, the young man was surprised by what he saw. A fiery beam of light fell on him. Our hero crashed into a car as a result of this attack. Around Phil there were fiery ribbons of symbols. Lip did not understand who was in front of him, because an ordinary person could not possess magic. Phil just laughed. The young man said that if it weren't for Lip's crazy abilities, the clan wouldn't have allowed him to use his power. The enemy considered the battle easy, even if he did not use his full force. Afterwards, Phil addressed his former employees, saying that they would all die. The boys got scared. Lip stood up, claiming that everything that came out of the guy's mouth was nonsense. The guy gave the enemy enough time. Phil also got tired of just chatting, so he decided to attack first. But the fist collided with the opponent's palm. Phil didn't understand how this was possible. There was a complete house going on around the guys. Phil tried to use his power, but to no avail. Our hero intercepted the enemy's blow, and then he grabbed me by the shoulder. To take revenge for everything, the guy threw the black dragon over his shoulder. The young man landed face down on the ground. Lip grabbed the hand with which the guy activated the spell. He immediately began to stretch his hand. Phil began to scream like hell in pain. Without thinking about his opponent's feelings, our hero kicked the young man. The landing was again not pleasant, into the wall. Lip even thought that Phil might be stronger, but it seems that this was not the case. Afterwards, he turned to the guards saying that the black dragon had killed, and they could forget everything. But one of the men pointed somewhere behind him. Suddenly, a chain of spells flew past Lip's face. Phil found the strength to stand up. The meeting still touched our hero's face. Lip asked the onlookers to leave. People thought it was strange that they were still in a danger zone. The force caused rocks to rise around Phil. The boy activated the spell chain again. Afterwards, Phil sent the entire pile of stones towards our hero. Lip stood motionless. He realized that he would die today. He put his hands forward to defend himself. But suddenly, not a single stone did any harm to the guy. He looked at what had happened. An immortal goddess appeared before him. At this time, the girls tried to understand what they heard. Cece tried to calm Kat down by saying that Lip was okay. The explosion raised yellow-orange-colored dust. Lip asked what happened to the immortal goddess, but she looked at the guy menacingly and said that she would deal with him later. The young man didn't understand where he had gone wrong. Lynn appeared in front of Phil in an instant. Without thinking, she grabbed the young man by the throat. Phil started shouting that he was a student of a great shaman, and the girl would die if anything happened to him. The girl was surprised that after 1,000 years, the Phil clan had fallen to an insignificant state. The young man was already losing consciousness. Lynn threw Phil aside. The man was surprised by the strength of the fragile girl. Lynn demanded to call the boss and leave. The guard rushed away shouting that the boss's body was motionless. Lip watched everything from the side. When the goddess approached, our hero hastened to thank her. But before he could finish his sentence, he immediately received it from the girl. After tasting Lip's blood, the girl reported that the taste did not change. People didn't understand at all what was happening. Lip didn't understand how it happened that the taste didn't change. The goddess was angry that our hero had enough conscience to ask questions. Afterwards, she told that the priest almost killed her. If it weren't for the body of the bloody soul, she wouldn't have even looked at our hero. The guy started making excuses that even though she was his teacher, she didn't say anything. The girl was furious that she was not accused of all the sins. Lynn reported that Priest Sean had made his next move and Lip should beware. The guy didn't understand what this had to do with him, but I didn't receive an answer. Only a pile of ruins remained at the site of the battle. After a few people began to rejoice that they had survived, people roared with joy that they would no longer be treated badly. But later, the couple became curious about where the two saviors had disappeared to. At this time, our heroes were already flying away from the scene of the incident. Lynn was curious why the guy was leaving so quickly, since he seemed to like being a hero, to which she received a negative answer. The girl became curious whether our hero had noticed anything. The guy was surprised. Lynn reminded him about Sharik and spirituality, and the guy was surprised that the goddess knew about it. Soon our heroes reached the forest. Lip didn't understand why they stopped. The girl reminded me about the spirit. The guy didn't understand what spirit they were talking about. This was followed by a lesson from the goddess about a spirit that has absorbed the energy of the sun and moon. Normal people can gain half of its powers when they practice. The guy didn't understand how a spirit could communicate with a zombie. Lynn again reminded about the body of the blood soul. Having heard about this, the guy began to rejoice, assuming that he was a normal person, for which he received a blow from the goddess. The girl didn't understand why she had to be so strict, but then she explained that the body is mixed together, called minus. The guy said that he still had to train. Lynn encouraged the young man by saying that he could not train, but he could merge with the spirit. She reminded me how the dragon released the seal. The notes grow. Yours as this brat warrior looks at other people's capabilities. Lip realized that he needed to intervene with the spirit so that the curse notes would not affect him. After thinking, Lynn reported that he had already begun to mix with the spirit. Lip wanted to speed up the process because the little milk ball had not appeared for a long time. Kat was very happy to see her friend alive. Before he could say anything, Elin rushed at him. But then she pushed our hero away. The guy didn't understand why he should despair because the young lady had once hugged him. Cece sat and was simply glad that her student returned alive. Soon Lip came up to her and told her not to worry. Cece asked not to call her teacher unless they were in class. Lip was a little confused. Hearing that Cece could be called by her first name, Elin rushed to protect her bodyguard. But the teacher didn't lose her composure and demanded that the boy not call her Cece. Elin was irritated. Kat took the young man from the girls and sent him to the shower because he was too dirty. Standing underwater, Lip reflected on what had happened. A conversation about how Sharik hadn't appeared for a long time floated through my head. Lynn explained that the spirit is in the growth stage. Afterwards, she left, citing that she had things to do. Lip asked her to tell him how to continue mixing with the ball, but she only replied that the time would come and he would find out everything himself. Lip came to the conclusion that he was not very strong. Our hero realized that he needed to train more with the ancient scroll. Soon he came out of the shower. All the girls stared at him. Elin stuck out her tongue, blushing, saying that no one would want to look at him. Cece was asked to explain the situation. Lip didn't know how to explain and came to the conclusion that he was too weak. Elin began to support him, saying that he was amazing, and even if he failed, she would still pay him a salary. Kat asked Lip not to go there anymore. The young man just laughed. Elin was furious that the young man had lied to them. The next day, the young man returned to the mansion. The woman said that all the headlines were about Lip clearing out a gang of dragons. Lip didn't expect it to cause such a stir. He hoped it wouldn't cause any problems. Mary said that there were no problems, but now our hero needs to be careful because he is famous. Lip noticed Elin when she started talking about wanting to meet with Lip, the young man. Lip didn't understand why the man wanted to meet him, since he had kicked him out of campus. Elin suggested that the man needed a new shield. After thinking about it, the guy realized that this was logical. Just as the young man was about to leave, the doorbell rang. The young lady laughed at the guy for not being able to escape. The butler let the rector in. Elin began to circle around the man with the bags. The man said he wanted to know how Lip was doing. Mary asked if the rector had come to find out whether the young man had admitted his mistakes. He started making excuses, saying that this is not what he meant, and that he regretted what happened earlier. Lip didn't believe a single word the guest said. The rector began to say that he was defending the young man. They were too dangerous, and the school had a responsibility to protect the students. Everyone present laughed. The young man thanked him for his protection and gently hinted that the man should leave. The rector said that he had not finished yet. The man came to invite the guys back to school because people missed them. The guy pulled his hand away and said that he had made a lot of mistakes and could not go back so early. The rector then suggested throwing a welcome party if they returned. The girl said that she was a realist and doubted the man's words. The guy began to come closer. Lip hinted that he is not into superficial things. The rector announced that the educational institution had decided to reward our heroes with 100,000 for bravery and hire Lip as chief of security. The young man realized that the director had been pushed. Lip said that he knew that a lot of financial resources were invested in the educational institution every year, and he thought that thousands were too few. And he added that if a man is not sincere, he can leave. Elin was in a hurry about the whole situation. The man agreed and said that the school would give 500,000. The young man could not refuse after such a sum and said that he would take responsibility. Afterwards, they saw the guest off. The girl praised the guy for his resourcefulness. The guy smiled and said that Elin should appreciate that he didn't use tricks on her, but noticing that she was getting angry, he hastened to calm her down. But then the girl's attention was drawn to something in our hero's hand. The guy was surprised that she noticed, but he still decided to play the fool. Mary assumed there was a tattoo on her arm. But it wasn't a tattoo, but a small milky ball, and Elin pulled out the guy's hand. The guy showed his hands and said that it was just a small tattoo, and there was nothing surprising about it. Mary told her daughter that young people with tattoos are normal. Elin started screaming that it hadn't happened before and he did it for his girlfriend. The guy laughed at her. But then he received an offensive blow from a young lady. She said that he was talking to someone at night. Mary asked them to calm down because many more people would arrive soon. The girl came up with many ways to kill her bodyguard. To distract himself, the guy asked to prepare for a meeting with people. The next day, the girl came out into the street and offered to go to school in Lip's car. The guy didn't understand where he got the car from. Elin reported someone's gift from the guests. The guy realized that these were the dragon's people. At the educational institution, everything was already prepared to meet our heroes. The girl noticed that the rector was trying in every possible way to appease our hero. Cece met the guys on the street. People immediately noticed the arrivals. Elin didn't understand why everyone was worried about Lip's return, to which I received the answer that he was simply too handsome. The girl started shouting that the guy was too vain. Everyone watched from the sidelines as our heroes squabbled. The guy approached Cece and asked what had happened in his absence. The teacher said that there was a basketball game soon, and they had Lip to win this time. The guy wasn't interested in basketball. The welcoming ceremony began soon after. The rector said that they had gathered for 2 events. The first event was Lip's return. The guy waved at everyone, embarrassed. When Elin invited him to dinner, he asked where they were going. The girl winked and said that the decision was up to our hero. The rector continued to talk about how the young man should feel the passion of the students. The rector also added that Lip was appointed chief of security for the educational institution. Our hero smiled. The guy grabbed the microphone and announced that the rector had promised to treat everyone who came to the event. A wave of joyful shouts swept through the hall. The rector was a little confused because he hadn't promised anything like that. Lip came down from the stage. Afterwards, he carefully took the girl by the hand, and he took Elin to eat barbecue. Soon the boys reached the right street. Lip pointed to one of the cafes, but something else caught Elin's attention. It was a courier with beer. Lip began to say that if the girl hadn't tried the beer, she had missed out on a lot. But while the guy was explaining, he looked away. It was the man who offered fortune-telling. Lip said they weren't interested. Our hero realized that it was the head of the clan who was hunting him. The man continued to insist, which began to anger the young man. Elin became interested in the stranger's proposal. The shaman said that he works only for the sake of faith, and not for money. Lip became interested in how he would find out his fate, and the man said that he would need some blood, and he would be able to find out the future of our hero. Elin was delighted. The shaman asked for a hand. Lip kept extending his hand and began to listen about lifelines. The man talked about how our hero was young when he lost his parents, and many things happened that changed his life. Lip didn't understand how the shaman found out about this. Elin became interested in what was going on with the wedding. The shaman asked to drop some blood onto something like a shell. The girl began to pull the guy's hand out herself. Smoke began to rise from the contact of the skin and the shell. The shaman was glad that everything happened correctly. Afterwards, the shaman declared that if Lip remained where he was, he could die, because fortune and poverty would remain with him. Our hero did not believe the charlatan. Afterwards, he took Elin and led her away. Having heard what the girl wanted to hear, the man said that Lip didn't care about the wedding. Elin was outraged that she did not listen to the shaman's words. At this time, the guy was thinking that the young lady would be in danger next to him. Soon the guys went into a restaurant where they cook barbecue. Elin had already managed to get drunk from a couple of glasses of beer. The guy's conversation turned to envy, and the fact that the girl was born rich. Elin said that she has no freedom because she is constantly being watched. And then the girl said that she didn't like offending Lip, but the guy didn't listen to the girl. His attention was drawn to something else. Lip suddenly rushed at the girl and knocked her down. Elin got it all wrong. But then blood dripped onto the girl's face. There was someone on the roof of the building. The killer reported that the mission had failed, and the target had noticed him. The guy asked Elin to hide and he would return soon. Lip raised his head and looked at the roof of the skyscraper once again. Without wasting any time, Lip climbed up the wall of the building. A few seconds later, the young man was already on the roof. Looking around, the guy noticed something again. The guy picked up something that caught his attention. It was a bullet with a blade depicted on the side. Lip soon returned to Elin. He invited her to sit on his back. But upon hearing about the taxi, the young man said that he would not check several times. According to the rules, after climbing onto Lear's back, the girl had to blindfold herself. After waiting for her to fulfill the conditions, the guy ran away. But Elin disobeyed and removed the blindfold. The girl grabbed the guy tighter. She soon put the blindfold back on, and realized she shouldn't ask Lip about it. Soon they reached home. Elin noticed that the road home was too fast. When asked about the rocket, the young man patted her on the head. Afterwards, Lip said that they needed to talk about what happened. The girl slightly misunderstood that. Elin pointed to the side, wondering what was there. The guy looked in the direction his companion pointed. It was an advertisement asking for someone to kill an animal in the forest. Lip pulled the girl into the house. The boys were all thinking about a beast that drinks human blood. Mary met our heroes at the entrance to the house. The guy immediately began to tell what happened. Mary asked if the target was definitely not her daughter. The guy said that he was sure that this time it was a very professional killer. The woman said that they could not delay with this, and asked. Elin sat at home for 2 days, and the driver and the bodyguard were watching her. The butler reported that people had arrived who wanted to see Lipa. The guests brazenly entered the house. Our hero was curious about what happened. The man introduced himself as the director of the educational institution where our hero studies. Lip began to ask what happened since the man came without warning, but suddenly the guests dispersed. The director came to remind our hero of his responsibilities as a citizen. Elin stepped forward to protect her bodyguard and demanded compensation for the duties Lip had to perform. The man supported her and said that the guy should sweat. Lip immediately said that he was not confident in his abilities. The man asked not to rush into a decision. Emily sat and watched everything from the sidelines and wondered if the director really had such a bad opinion of their financial situation. The men immediately began to reproach the girl for disrespect. Gabe reassured his men. Soon the guests left. Mary heard about the previous case and was worried whether the guy would be able to handle it. If this is who the guy was thinking about, he should be able to deal with this monster, and he has a lot of influence on him. Elin was worried about the guy. The guy calmed her down by saying that he remembered everything. The boys went to school, but before they could enter, everyone ran away from the territory screaming in fear. Our hero was confused. He stopped one of the running girls and asked what was going on. The girl, with horror in her eyes, said that a monster had attacked the school. Lip ordered Elin to hide in a safe place. The girl was not happy with this statement. The guy didn't intend to repeat it twice and ran towards the tragedy. The director and rector of the educational institution were standing at the stadium. The rector reported that a bunch of students were locked up with a monster. Lip soon arrived. The rector wanted to introduce the young man, but Gabe said that it was necessary and they knew each other. Among those present was a shaman who was indignant that they had found a replacement for him. The man just waved it off. Lip wanted to hurry because there were a lot of students inside. The shaman jumped up and rebuked our hero for judging him. The director asked our hero not to worry. The shaman found himself near the monster. The enemy sensed his presence. The zombie looked towards the enemy, and then he screamed with rage. The muscles began to increase. It is unknown where the shaman got the sword from. The monster was very angry. He reminded the shaman that he had no understanding of what magic was. Lip watched from the side. Others were glad that it would soon all be over. The shaman began to read the spell. The pendant around Lip's neck began to glow, which surprised him. Our hero thought about the fact that the Taoist's spell resonated with the peach sword. The energy began to lift the sword upward. A whirlpool appeared in the sky. The monster was surprised by the shaman's actions. Afterwards, it rushed at the man. The shaman shouted out the last words, and the monster was struck by lightning. Everything happened in the air. The men were amazed by the shaman's power. Shane was surprised that his strength was not enough to bind him. The monster began to move his hand. Joy quickly gave way to misunderstanding and fear. The monster was freed from the shackles of the lightning chain and was very angry. The shaman did not understand how this was possible. The rector pointed in the direction of the incident and asked the boss to prepare for something. The shaman didn't understand what to do next because he didn't want to die. The monster came closer and closer. Shane tried to threaten the monster, but it was no use. The monster was furious and was determined to kill his opponent. Shane froze in fear for a moment. He pointed his sword, ordering them not to approach him. Without fear, the zombie grabbed the weapon, and then he broke the sword altogether. Shane took out the paper. He was angry that his sword was broken. It was a sheet of paper with seals that the shaman threw towards the monster. The seals began to adhere to the enemy's body, but something didn't go according to plan. Afterwards, Shane laughed, shouting that no one could escape the Tao. But the sheets with seals began to move away from the monster's body. The monster immediately rushed at the enemy. A second later, Shane was grabbed by the neck. The man lost the strength to resist. The students watched from the sidelines and understood that they could not be saved. The boys understood that their death was getting closer and closer to them. The students did not want to die and were shaking with fear. The director and the rector were no less frightened and understood that Shane was dead. The monster jumped. The monster flew over the fence. The director realized that it was all over. But not hearing the children's cries, he opened his eyes. And he noticed that the monster had intercepted Lip. Gabe was surprised and scared at the same time. Lip grabbed the monster's paw with both hands, and then he threw it over himself. But the monster did not fall, it only slipped. Lip jumped into the sky and launched an attack. Dust rose up where the enemy stood. Gabe was surprised by the boy's strength. Lip landed successfully on his feet. The smoke began to clear. Red eyes appeared in the remaining dust, and soon the monster itself appeared. Then, unexpectedly for everyone, the monster spoke. Soon a special military detachment arrived. The director asked us not to rush because there were injured students. The monster rushed at our hero. The guy gathered all his strength into a fist, and he struck. The blow hit the ground, causing a wave of destruction. The monster flew up slightly. The monster was furious. The monster jumped on our hero. The zombie decided to bite Lip on the neck. Our hero jumped back. The monster came even closer. The blow landed on the young man's leg. Lip jumped back further. The guy dropped to one knee to wait it out. The wound began to tingle slightly. The guy understood that he had no choice. The zombie rushed away again. But the young man disappeared and the blow missed. Lip found himself in the air. The young man rose even higher. The zombie jumped too. The young man began to prepare. Lip gathered all his strength for a new attack. The attack forces were directed towards the enemy. The zombie flew down. Our hero flew out of the smoke. The fall caused an explosion. Stones flew in all directions. Elin ran to the bars, worried about our hero. The director was interested in who had won. Someone appeared in the dust. It was Lip. The men were glad to see our hero alive. The children were glad to be alive. The hero himself was at his limit. Lip looked towards the battlefield. A bright light appeared and no one understood what it was. The monster appeared and attacked Lip, demanding his blood. Elin rushed to help his bodyguard. Lip ordered not to approach. There was a hole in the zombie's body, but Lip couldn't lose. The monster grabbed the young man by the hand. The zombie started screaming. Lip tried to get out, and then he struck at everything. Using energy, he threw the enemy away. Lip called the monster to come closer. The monster stood up. He was furious. The zombie began to come closer, and then the enemy ran away. Lip didn't understand what was happening. Elin ran up to our hero. The girl threw herself into the young man's arms. But then something caught the guy's attention. The girl realized that she had hurt the young man. The men came up to ask what was wrong. The director asked the young man to go to the hospital. Elin was furious. The girl covered our hero with her body. The young man approached and asked directly whether the director really wanted to get rid of him, to which he began to deny it. The guy laughed in his mind that he was already a zombie and had nothing to fear. Lip had a question that the man agreed to answer. The young man asked his question in his ear. Afterwards, the young man took the girl home. For a moment, Lip realized something. Our hero noticed Elin and intercepted the unknown object. It was something like a kunai. The guy remembered Lena's words. It was obvious that the weapon belonged to the priest the girl had warned against. The young man realized everything when he looked at his hand. Elin was thrown aside. Lip rushed to dodge the attacks. The blow landed on our hero's face, emitting steam. The young man realized that he couldn't escape. Soon the boys were surrounded. The strangers began to put some sticks on it. They wore the bandage of the priestly clan. The director and the rector did not understand what was happening. The man was furious that the priestly cult had started operating so late. The director started shouting something and security started to act later. The special forces were ordered to act. The sniper team was ordered to target anyone of unknown origin and kill them instantly. The sniper took his position. Our heroes found themselves in a lighted circle. The same circle appeared in the sky. If this continues, there is no way out. They really need to escape from there right now. Lip pushed off the ground to dodge. The young man rose into the air and took Elin with him. Our hero wanted to break through the circle from above, but it was all in vain. Lip covered Elin with his body. All the darts hit our hero in the back. The boys flew down. The darts were strange and Lip passed out. Dust rose up in the place where the boys landed. Lip held Elin so that she would not get hurt. The director was furious that the soldiers did not shoot at the target. The monks began to call upon the power. One of the young men hastened to warn his comrades to be careful. The monks used technology to summon a shield. The defense was created from the strength of the youths and the earth. The bullet failed to penetrate the protection. Where the stake had been placed, cracks appeared in the ground. Lip realized that the monks were trying to break him. Golden threads wrapped around our hero's hands. One of the opponents shouted that action was needed. The monks took out sheets of paper with seals. The sheets were directed towards our hero. Lip couldn't move because of the threads. Steam was coming from the body. The circle began to glow even brighter. Nikki left marks on the young man's hands. Lip realized that the monks were not so simple, and he became interested in who they were. But then something brought our hero out of his thoughts. Lip noticed that the wounds were healing. The young people also didn't understand what was happening. A golden beam pierced one of the cult boys. Secunda and some of the team members were killed. The young man ordered not to be distracted and to return to the target. Lightning appeared again from the circle in the sky. Lip hugged Elin protectively. Gathering his strength, the guy pushed off from the ground. The pendant began to glow. Elin didn't understand what was happening. The beam went to the center of the circle. This beam emanated from the body of the young man. The monk commanded that this was their chance. The stones rose into the air from magical energy. The suspension also began to rise in the air. Lip couldn't believe that this amulet on his neck would save his life. Our hero broke the threads. Golden threads began to fall to the ground. Lipu became interested in who the old man was who gave him the pendant. The commander-in-chief of the detachment ordered that our hero be detained so that he could not escape. Lip moved forward straight towards the enemy. The guy gained momentum with the help of a jump. Our hero rushed to attack immediately. In a moment, Lip scattered everyone. The monks scattered in different directions. Lip didn't care who was in front of him or their status. The young man did not understand how he could be so fast. Our hero attacked from behind. Lip warned that it would be better for the enemy not to use tricks to attack him unnoticed. The guy pushed his opponent back. Lipa began to catch his breath after the attack. Within minutes, the entire cult was defeated. The young man approached the instigator of this whole situation. He was interested in what the head wanted, but instead of answering, the guy laughed. The shaman tried to hold back his laughter. Lipa was getting seriously irritated by the whole situation. The enemy soon lost consciousness. Lip threw him aside like a sack of potatoes. Soon the director ran up shouting that he was worried about our hero. Our hero wanted to ask the director for a favor. The guy asked to let the students go while he checked the unknown people. The trainers began to leave the battlefield. Our hero reflected on the fact that the people were well trained. The tricks they used were much stronger than those of ordinary pawns. The stranger's sign on his clothes attracted attention. Elin ran to Lip and asked him to go to the hospital. The young man thought that arrows, flags, threads, and traps were clearly not intended for ordinary people. Elin was angry that the bodyguard did not listen to her. Lip was distracted from his thoughts. In order to calm the girl down, the young man agreed to go to the hospital so that he could then go on another adventure. The men were scared that Lip was leaving with arrows in his back as if everything was normal. One of Gabe's men reports that our hero looks like nothing happened. Everyone laughed at the young man. At this time, our heroes arrived at headquarters. Elin was worried that Lip still hadn't gone to the doctor. The young man began to take off his t-shirt to treat the wounds. The girl started screaming that she was making sure the young man didn't die from blood loss. Lip decided to tease the young lady. The girl pushed the guy's hand away in surprise. Lip said that he was going to take a shower. Elin decided to serve the guy by saying that she would spy on him. Lip went into the shower and began to examine the injuries. Suddenly the pendant began to glow again. The young man began to remove the weapon from the wounds. A second and the wounds healed. At this time, the young man thought that the monk's target was a zombie. The guy thought about how he was recognized. While Lip was lost in his thoughts, Elin was seriously angry. Out of resentment, she hit our hero for not listening to her. Lip started shouting that this was not the way to treat a patient. Soon the boys arrived home. Elin walked a little ahead, but the angry young man did not understand what was wrong. Mary was expecting children. Elin told about everything that happened. Mary immediately asked if he was wounded. Lana said that she previously specialized in traditional medicine. The guy was slightly tense by her words. Night soon fell. Lana was sitting in her room waiting for guests. Steam was coming out of the bowl. Elin and Lip arrived soon after. The girl said that the strange smell was sandalwood. Elin was surprised to hear about undressing. The young lady took the words about undressing to heart. Lip didn't understand why Elin would react like that, since it wasn't her who was being asked to take off her pants. Lana said that there was no need to undress completely. She then explained that she was not interested in Lip. The guy began to undress. Instantly, the clothes were lying on the floor. The young man was left in his underwear. Elin covered her face with her hands, opening her eyes slightly. Afterwards, she ran away altogether. Lana asked the young man to lie down on the bed face down. After fulfilling the request, the girl began to prepare the tools. The girl slowly placed the needles on the necessary points. These points formed a triangle. The guy was curious about what kind of needles the girl used. He felt good from their influence. The young man fell asleep when he received the call. The guy reached for the device. It was Cat calling. The guy assumed a sitting position. Catherine reported that their company had acquired a major client. Lip asked how big they were, to which I received the answer that they were paying $3 million. Lana said that the guy could sleep for 2 or 3 hours. Lipa said that the girl would stare at him. Our hero decided to ask how Lana inserted the needles. She only replied that it was none of his business. Afterwards, she kicked the young man out. The young man did not understand what had happened. The guy got dressed on the go. Lip wanted to sleep very much. Our hero thought that Lana did not pose a danger, for now. Entering the room, he fell onto the bed. Thoughts returned to the incident. The guy realized that he needed to become stronger. He took out the scrolls. I started to study them. Suddenly he realized something. The dark zombie was not afraid of the light. Lip realized he had to use mahogany. The next day, the young man went to training. Lip started with running. Having run into the park, the young man looked around, making sure that there was no one there. Lip recalled the chronicles. Started training. Energy enveloped the guy. The guy really felt like something had penetrated his body. Lip's guess was correct. When our hero returned, he was met by Elin. The young lady pounced on the guy with questions. Lip asked if the girl was worried. The girl blushed and told him not to flatter himself. Elin reported that someone has been waiting for the guy for quite a long time. The young lady pushed the young man into the house. He was the butler of the Cooper family. The young man said that he did not know anyone from this family. The butler said that his master wanted to invite Lip to his place for a while. The guy got a call and asked him to take his time. Having disconnected, the young man breathed a sigh of relief. Elin said that the guy didn't need to stay with her. The young man decided to ask the girl what she thought of him as a security guard. The young lady blushed. The guy interrupted her, saying that the girl knows how to take care of people. Elin stopped listening and covered her ears. The guy asked if he should become the Cooper family's bodyguard. The girl began to be indignant because he was her personal bodyguard. The young man asked what this meant. Elin freed herself from his grip, and then she walked away dissatisfied. Soon the young man arrived at the office. The guy asked to tell him what happened. The girl submitted a case that was recently received by them. Kat reported that the client was already waiting. It was a young guy. The girl asked to look at the client's information. The guy said that if it is found, $3 million will be paid. Lip apologized for keeping the guy waiting. The young man said that he was waiting for our hero. The client was a programmer. Kat quickly explained some of the terms used by the client. The guy reported that his life is still considered quite successful. Lip decided to get straight to the point. Neil asked to find his wife. Lip began to look through the information. First, it was necessary to look at the girl's backstory. Somewhere on the other side of the city, they reported that everything was going according to plan. The stranger reported that everything was going according to plan. Lip came to the agency to pick up documents regarding Nilu's wife's case. The girl with glasses said that he could come and take a look. Lip learned that the guy's wife was an orphan. The woman asked if everything was okay. The guy felt smart that he had to bother her to get the documents from the orphanage. The next day, the young man was already in the orphanage where Tiana, Neil's wife, grew up. The woman reported that the girl came to the orphanage with about several other orphans. Lip inquired about the girl's welfare, to which he received the answer that the lady was independent. The woman said that the girl was very smart and had a good head on her shoulders. The young man listened to everything attentively. Our hero was surprised when he heard the familiar name of his second child. The director of the orphanage asked what was wrong. Lip asked for a photo of the girl in question. The young man recognized her immediately. Lip returned home very late, which angered Elin. When they grabbed his hand, Lip got scared. Seeing the photo in her hands, the girl snatched it away. In the photo was Lana and her driver. Ellen looked at the image and was surprised to learn that Lana was an orphan. The guy shut her mouth. The young lady reported that the girl was in the living room. Lip visited Lana. The guy said that the girl had too much free time. Lana asked to get straight to the point. The young man sat down next to her. Lip spoke to Tiana, waiting for the girl's reaction. Lana wanted to remind our hero of something. With a serious face, she asked him not to meddle in other people's business. The guy said it was no more dangerous than the 8 men who attacked him. Leaving the girl, Lip told her that she shouldn't worry. Having heard that the young man would complete the investigation, the girl wanted to stop him. Everything was getting out of control. She decided to say something about it, but her opponent's phone was switched off. Lana wanted to know what the opponents were planning. She wanted to protect Lip. The guy was resting on the grass. The phone suddenly rang. The young man answered reluctantly. It was Kat who called and said that she would send the address where Tiana would be. Lip immediately became interested in this news. The young man went to the right address. The security guard asked for an invitation. Lip showed and was missed. Our hero was being followed. As soon as the young man entered, the organizer noticed him, and he transmitted the information using an earpiece. Lip replaced the girl who received the signal. The young man sat down nearby. Soon he decided to approach Tiana. But another guest noticed the young man, and this very guest got ahead of our hero. The young man invited her to dance with him. Lip decided to remind that he was the first to talk to the girl. Our hero rudely pushed the stranger away. Lip decided to teach a lesson in manners, but the stranger said that it was dangerous for Lip to be in the building. After that, the young man immediately became even more aggressive. The man demanded to act faster. Suddenly the boys were blinded by a bright light. The girl tore her dress. The lady sent a weapon towards our hero. The stranger began to protect our hero. The weapon passed right through. The stranger asked Lip to leave quickly. The girl was told that she should leave because she would not win the fight. Lipu was curious why they helped him. Our hero saw Neil. Neil asked not to kill him. The man swore that he didn't know all the people. Lip wanted to know why the man did this to him. Our hero wanted to know who was hunting him, but Neil didn't know. Lipa was surrounded. Tiana approached the guy, clapping her hands. Neil said that it was she who threatened him and ordered him to do all this. Lip let go of Neil. But before the man could escape, a bullet flew into his back. The girl said that Neil would not leave alive, just like our hero. Thousands of arrows flew at Lipa.